luxury services are just not really, man, there's a lot of Tacomas here at work, but just saw 2 matching Tacomas drive by. But that's my ADHD popping in. Squirrel.
You're listening to the Art and War podcast with your hosts, Mitch and Nathan. Mitch is a former airborne infantry squad leader who now spends most of his time coaching soccer. Nathan is a professional illustrator and an avid shooter with a couple of years of Canadian military experience. Together, they run the Seaburn art page. Enjoy the show.
All right. Well, what I asked before we started was, because I just got back from like 2 months of just not doing anything. Have you ever considered just like getting off of social media and just not even looking at it and then coming back after like a couple months and just seeing what's up?
Oh, yeah. No, I've thought about leaving the entire company for a brief time and then coming back to, whatever problems have occurred. Unfortunately, I have learned more recently that even if I leave for 1 day or 2 days, there are various decisions and things that either got made or haven't gotten made that needed to get made or shouldn't have been made that then have to be rediscussed. But I would like to be in that position where I could step away. I think that'd be pretty cool. I would actually probably come back in a rage about like Instagram stuff, potentially seeing stuff, because I keep all that rage bottled up by being on it more regularly. And so I think the 2 months would actually bring me back. It'd be a different me after 2 months, but it's an interesting concept. I'm also interested I've thought about it in the past from more of a testing perspective, to test how well the organization runs without me, like if I were gone permanently or, died. And so I actually thought about that too, like 1 month, where like, hey, I'm gone. I'm going to prep you guys for like 2 weeks and then I'm out. And we're going to like trial run, see what it's like with me gone. And then come back and see like, all right, what decisions got made, what didn't get made, what happened. All right, we got to fix these things. We need to hire these people to replace like elements of me. So that may actually be something I do next year, especially for, I don't ever take PTO. So I've accumulated probably hundreds of days of that, but I don't take it.
My mind jumps to that meme where, Mitch, you posted this, or what? No, Victim Henry posted this of, that show Community? Childish Gambino goes out to go get pizza and he comes back and the whole room is on fire. It just, someone's dead on the ground and they're trying to resuscitate him. Someone else is just crying in the corner. That's what it was like for you. And I think that's what it would be like at TREX Arms.
Well, I thought you did a pretty good job. Well, the thing is, my decisions that I make for what we do here is significantly less than what Lucas has to make running a business.
Oh, yes. I meant it would literally be on fire and that someone would be getting resuscitated in the corner.
Well, with that said, so right now it's pretty autonomous. The thing about my current job, this is actually kind of fun. Like when I go home or if I'm at home late or, I don't have the meeting till later, it's not like my inbox fills up with company emails and phone calls from people at work needing decisions. Like the business is pretty autonomous. It's like probably 90% autonomous. It's just when those big decisions, like we had one yesterday, regarding a holster thing. And it was like, well, do we keep making these holsters or do we stop completely? And I was just like, well, and like decisions for the moment. No, we're going to keep making them because probably 98% of our customers still need them. And maybe 2% will have this issue and we'll deal with those with our customer service department because that's kind of what they're there for. And then we'll, evaluate the problem once we have more data. But no, we're not just going to shut down all holster making that will negatively affect all these other customers. Plus the money coming in, which goes to, payroll and running the business. And so there's like little things like that sometimes people need direction on, but the business is pretty autonomous at this point. I mean, all the departments they know what to do. They, Kyle's guys are all squared away. Our operations guys squared away. I mean, when I go on if I happen to go on a vacation, which is usually like I take Friday and I do Saturday, Sunday, and that's it. There's not a ton of stuff going on that I'm like getting called away from like some businesses. So that's cool. But I have noticed that even being gone for a normal business day, like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, interesting stuff happens. And then I come back Thursday and I'm like, all right, now what? Let's talk about some things. So it's not bad, not horrible.
Do you ever just log out of Instagram? Like when you're at home, like you go home and, you said you take those Fridays. Are you like completely turned off, or are you still kind of, you'll check your phone every so often, maybe check some emails, or is it just like completely done, or what's that look like for you?
I'm actually already pretty switched off. So right now my posting schedule, because I don't run the TREX page at all, which is awesome. I go home. Usually I'm in meetings, like my time's completely blocked out from when I leave the house to like when I get home. And I haven't looked at Instagram. I haven't commented on Instagram. I haven't posted. I haven't done a thing. And I usually post at like 7 p.m. when I'm home. I look at some comments and then I get on my computer or I'm doing stuff with Kara and I'm done. So like I'm not really on Instagram. The only time I'm on Instagram consistently is if I run a Q&A where I'm like coming back and responding to DMs and like answering questions, or if I post a very provocative post and want to like watch the comments from that. But yeah, like yesterday I was on Instagram for probably a total of 15 minutes. It just doesn't work with my job right now. So Instagram's not really an issue, which is also probably why my Instagram page isn't growing very fast, just because other stuff's taking over. But yeah, putting my phones down and just focusing on other stuff has been super easy the last, I'd say 6 months since the beginning of the year.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's something that I've kind of had to learn to do more since I've been retired and I took those 2 months. It was kind of like a learning thing. I'm like, okay, put the phone down, be present, and like just shut off.
Oh, dude, and, you were addicted. I'm going to call you out. You were addicted.
I don't know if it was necessarily addicted. It was just more like it felt necessary. Like I had to,
that's addiction.
I had to be good at it.
You're helping people. Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's a sign of addiction. But like,
turn your notifications off, Mitch.
I can't. It doesn't let you for more than 12 hours.
Dude, you have to do it from your phone. You got to go into your settings and
you explain this to me. Actually, yeah.
I've got them. I've had them off for years.
Yeah, dude.
Gone.
Like I saw an interview with a bunch of tech CEOs and people who work for social media companies, and every single one of them, without a fail, said they had their notifications turned off. It is terrible for you.
See, mine have been on for ever since I started.
Is this why you have a beard now? Stress beard?
No, I have a beard because I refuse to shave or cut my hair now for however long I want.
Nice.
The man bun's pretty. Yeah, no, it's really. I'm enjoying it.
I mean, are you going for the SEAL look? I mean, that's the real question.
Well, see, and that's the thing. People are like, "Oh, you're definitely like a retired vet," and I'm like, God, like, it's not what I'm going for. I'm just trying to be happy. All right.
Just like where you're recording right now, it looks like an underground bunker in Azerbaijan or something.
I am in a basement, and that's a tapestry.
But you're not hostage. You don't have to blink at us. Although the bit rate on this video is so low, I probably can't even see you blinking.
Just to kind of give everyone a word picture, it's Mitch is in a basement. It looks like he's a hostage somewhere, and Lucas is recording from his car. I'm in my kitchen, and it's just kind of an interesting mix.
Well, we did look at houses today, but it's just like. I look at something like we were looking at a house today. It was really small. It was like a 2-bedroom, 900 square foot. Like it needed work, and we were looking at it. I'm like, I mean, this could be like a interesting like starter home, like a project, like if the price is right. And then they showed me the price, and they're like $180,000, and I'm like, I'm not spending $180,000 on like a 900 square foot little broken down like house. Like it doesn't even have heat. Like it,
oh wow,
like there's no heat. So I'm like,
yeah,
I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Is this
yeah
to dox you even more, but you've doxed yourself, dude? 180K.
I'm sure I can find the house now just based on hearing that number.
I'll check that out. But no, it's just it's kind of crazy. Have you noticed? So like supply chain stuff, you do everything kind of domestically. I mean, you had the whole AC Uno shenanigans that happened, but have you noticed any supply chain issues in like the last couple of years?
So I'm not in purchasing, but obviously I hear when certain things can't be bought. We haven't had any major issues this year. Now the only thing, and I think this is a long term, we did have one vendor recently tell us they make an electronic part. I won't say what it is. And they said, hey, we may have trouble. And they only just told us this like, I think a couple weeks ago. Hey, we may have trouble getting circuits for this thing. Stock up. So we ordered an extra pallet or two of it. Like it's a lot. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so small weapon accessories, it sounds like, are going to start being affected potentially by the chip shortage and all that stuff. But everything else, nylon side seems pretty good, seems strong. I mean, we've got thousands of AC1s stocked. We're good to go there. Our screws and everything that we get for our holsters seem fine. it's we supply all the supply issues. It wasn't so much supply issues back in 2020. It was just a demand issue. Right now, it's just not there. Like I was watching back when all the shootings were happening a few weeks ago, which is really interesting that they all happened like all at once. It's just interesting, fascinating.
That's really interesting. Big coincidence, right?
Yes, I know, right? But I had 10 tabs. We're a distributor, or we have an account with RSR Group. They're a big distributor, one of the big 3 distributors in the gun industry. And I had 10 tabs open for M&P Sport 2, Colt 6920, Ruger, like all the main like budget ARs. And every night I went home and I hit F5 on all of them and watched the numbers fluctuate, because there were probably 4,000 ARs in stock total, or 3,000. And I was just waiting for them to all get bought up and go to gun stores to, sell to panicked people. I think I only saw like 200 sell over like 2 weeks, 300. So like there hasn't been a run on guns. And that's one way I have a sort of a mechanism for kind of tracking that, because when guns sell, everything else does. But everything else doesn't really sell until the guns sell. And ammo hasn't gone up in price. Everything's pretty tame right now. I think the only concern is the chip shortage thing affecting optics, lights, IR lasers potentially, probably. Another indicator is I just bought for once in my life, we're splurging on an entertainment system, which I probably won't use that often. So like, 120 hertz TV, the new Xbox, the new PlayStation, all rigged up to it, and I asked the guys I was buying it from, I said, are those going to be easy to get? And they said, no, actually the new Xbox, the new PlayStation are actually really hard to get because of the chip shortage. And they were like, some of the TVs are hard to get too. So like consumer electronics are seeing it. I don't know always how the gun industry feels at the same time, like, and how some of those circuits and chip parts and stuff are shared. But no, we haven't anything yet. But the election's coming up, so that'll be a demand issue more than a supply issue, I think.
Yeah, we'll see what happens this summer. The summer, the last couple of years have been crazy.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what happens next. Is it going to be more riots? Is it going to be aliens? We'll see.
Aliens
give
would
it 3
drive
months.
sales. Yeah, aliens would drive sales a lot. That'd be pretty cool.
Well, I feel like the Supreme Court rulings are going to drive stuff, because you're going to see, I think, the left is going to use all of these rulings that did not go in their favor whatsoever. And they're going to be like, this is why you need to vote more of us in. And people are going to kind of fall for it and buy into it. And then they're going to use like the guns, as always, as like a fear tactic, why you need to vote for them. And then they're going to use all of these things. And I think that'll heighten the already heightened unrest from individuals. And then we'll start seeing maybe not the perfect storm that we had back in like 2020, when it was civil unrest, the riots, and like COVID, where it was just like the world's literally going to end, so everybody has to buy stuff. I don't know if we'll see a perfect storm like that again coming up, but
there's a couple added things. So our sales right now are very consistent with summer slump. Like every year, every gun industry business gets a summer slump, except in 2020 there was not a slump because it was summer peacefulness that entire time. But so nothing happened in 2020. But summer slump, our numbers are very consistent to last year. They're higher, which is good, but they're not like super high, and spiky all over the place. But what I'm actually concerned about, and I think is affecting some people's, or a lot of people's purchasing habits, is gas prices. Gas prices and home buying and stuff, where if all of a sudden 5% of your money disappears that doesn't normally, or 10%, I mean, that is going to affect people, or at least people who watch their budgets. That is going to affect what extra stuff they buy. Like, do they actually need that multicam black chest rig that they've wanted since they saw their favorite goon operator wear it on Instagram? No, they probably won't. They'll probably be like, well, crap, gas is now $4.50 a gallon. I'm spending twice that I did last year over, driving my hour to work, 30 minutes to work, 20 minutes to work. And I think we watch that every week. We do fuel, like crude oil and all that. We go over that and see, if all that goes up, does that affect people's purchasing decisions? And I think it has a little bit. If gas, jumps to a certain amount, some people can't afford to go to work because they're spending more on gas than they are holding the job. And that will definitely affect purchasing decisions. But gas seems like it just came down. It was down about 40 cents this week compared to last week. So that's pretty big. So sales could obviously go up next week because of that.
Yeah, that's actually something I noticed with, I shoot with a bunch of guys and I know a bunch of guys, and that directly correlates with how much gear they buy. That directly correlates with how much money they have for ammo and everything else. A good buddy of mine, who I'm not going to dox here, his budget is directly correlated with, hey, I have to drive half an hour to work every day. I actually don't have money to shoot this week. I don't have money to shoot next week either. People are spending, triple what they would have a couple of years ago on groceries. God, my grocery bill, because I buy for one. I don't eat a ton, and I cook a lot for myself, and I eat relatively Spartan. A couple of years ago, I'd be spending $30-$40 a week. Now it's over $100 often for the same ingredients. And when a couple of years ago it'd be $20 to fill my tank, now it's 80 or 90. And that really does affect people. Combine that with summer. What did Biden say? The economy is doing great and people have more in their savings accounts than ever before. Well, that was a fucking lie.
No, you're not wrong. And we'll see what happens with that. I mean, and a lot of companies out there are having a hard time. I mean, at the end of the day, like, if inflation and prices of everything goes up, then people's salaries and pay has to go up to match that. But not everyone's position that they work can match that in a market that has, equity and, what all is going on with that. Like, if our sales go down because everyone else doesn't have as much money, that doesn't mean we can go and pay everyone, plus 15% or whatever, at the end of the year, if our bottom line isn't there to support that. And so it's a vicious cycle of the money not being there for increasing pay to match the inflation because sales aren't there to support that. So, we'll see what happens. But with the economy being as bad as it is, it can only get worse. Better.
On the bright side,
it may force a election. The election coming up there may be a much stronger chance of a Republican winning, which has its own pros and cons, obviously. But because, hey, let's face it, with Biden in, we've had a ton of really awesome Supreme Court stuff happen. So it's not even like we have to have a certain president in office to get some work done. So that's kind of cool, actually, as a silver lining.
Sorry, Mitch, it looked like you were about to say something.
Knowing what you know now, in this day and age, like today, let's say TREX Arms didn't exist, but you have all the experience that you have now of running TREX Arms. In this economy, in this state, with everything going on, would you start a new business like TREX Arms today?
If it was in manufacturing, yes. If it was a luxury, heck no. Luxuries go first, unless it's like Penny Entertainment, because that was obviously still successful during the 20s. Not our 20s, 100 years ago, 20s. Manufacturing, 100%. Especially, I think COVID showed everyone, hey, stuff made in America that's not dependent on foreign import is cool, and it's pretty rad. So, yeah, manufacturing, definitely. In fact, Tara and I are looking for various businesses or types of businesses that we may want to acquire on the side, and we're looking at manufacturing like type companies that make things from scratch, not raw goods, like, oh, we want to buy a steel plant. Like, we're not looking into that, although that'd be pretty rad. But manufacturing companies that make things from scratch. Entertainment services, luxury services are just not really. There's a lot of Tacomas here at work, but just saw 2 matching Tacomas drive by. But that's my ADHD popping in, squirrel. But yeah, manufacturing for sure. But again, it kind of depends on what's being manufactured. Like, are you manufacturing a luxury mirror that's $5,000 that only the rich can afford? Or are you manufacturing a budget item that everyone can afford because they can't go and buy the nice thing that's $100 and now you're making it for 50, you're undercutting, and now people can actually afford that thing. Like, if people can come in and manufacture budget items in a economy that's in a downturn, like, those businesses are probably going to do pretty well if they can figure out ways to streamline.
Not to just detract the conversation, we'll get back onto it, because the economy and economics in general really fascinates me. It especially fascinates me with generally how simple it is and how everything can be tied to a couple principles that people don't seem to get. But the ADHD comment, how does it feel? Because I had this talk with Colin a couple of weeks ago, and like ADHD has something between ruined my life and made it a lot better in certain ways. A friend of mine refers to it as diet autism, which I find kind of fun. How do you find running a business with ADHD? Because I find it difficult to even like put my pants on in the morning sometimes.
So obviously it's on a spectrum, and I've never been officially diagnosed, but based on how I was compared to my siblings growing up and how I do things now, and and I've had other people. I've even had one of my exes actually told me that she believed I had a high functioning Asperger's. So cool, never got that diagnosed. It's very hard to get that diagnosed as an adult, and I'm definitely not Elon Musk, so that's okay. But to be honest, I don't think I could have started TREX without whatever level of ADHD I have, because the benefit of ADHD is it is more difficult to focus on one subject like in a disciplined manner and like deal with that because you're constantly getting distracted. But the benefit of ADHD is you can actually fluctuate between tasks and be dealing with a bunch of tasks all at once. And I remember I was at a CQB school and I was asking the cadre, I was like, hey, how do you guys deal with students who come through who have obviously like ADHD or are just really like even keeled, really focused? And they said, oh, the guys with ADHD typically perform better. They're able to compartmentalize tasks, swap between both, manage more information pouring in, and they're actually able to fluctuate in a high stress environment with a lot of decisions being thrown their way than the guys who are more laser focused on, one task, at a time, who have a harder time moving to the next task. Now, again, everyone's on a spectrum. That's why it's called a spectrum, where your ADHD might be more haywire than mine, and mine may be more tamed now after dealing with it for, however many years I've been learning how to do the business with it. But yeah, there's little things that come up that I definitely notice where I'm like, yeah, that's probably not what normal or someone who doesn't have this goes through. I probably have a little bit extra. But I actually think in my case, it's been a huge advantage over being that person who's like, no, I have to do this one thing until it's completely done. And I can't think about anything else till it's done. And I'm like, all over the place. The trick though is because ADHD people are typically all over the place trying to multitask, you shouldn't rely on being able to come back to all the things you've just thought about. So you have to write stuff down. And I've only been doing that for the last 3 years of literally, I think here, someone says a thing about a project, I immediately write down. And then later I go back to the notes and I have a snapshot of all the stuff going on, because I probably only think about 60% of everything going on, or 50%. It's just too much now to handle all the projects in my brain. There's just too much going on. But I love it. I think it's great. It's definitely helps with shooting too, as far as target transitioning, shooting and moving and doing stuff. And yeah, it's awesome actually.
Yeah. No, I like it. I refer to it kind of affectionately as my weaponized autism, which
that is kind of what it is.
Yeah, but you're right about the writing things down thing. It helps tremendously. But my problem is if I'm not looking at something directly, or if I don't have a lot of visual cues to go back to, it ceases to exist.
But with that said, I would be fired. I know for a fact I would be fired working most jobs because I'm not necessarily laser focused enough on certain things or having the attention to detail. I score really low on attention to detail tests. So I know for a fact, if I went and worked certain jobs, I would perform really badly at them. But at other jobs, I'd be fine and potentially do really well. And that's also possibly why I'm in the position that I'm in right now and not in a position working for, another company, because my gifts or abilities or whatever are doing what I do right now, not, trying to work, a different kind of job. So it's a double-edged sword. You could perform really well at these sorts of things, but you're probably going to perform really badly at these other ones over here. I'm not great at managing people, as an example, like day-to-day operations. I'm much better at other parts of the business and understanding what you're good at, not good at, delegating, getting the right people, that's the name of the game.
This week's episode is brought to you by FieldSeats.com. FieldSeats.com is an e-commerce federally licensed firearms dealer. They provide virtual reviews on brand new firearms, and at the end of the review, they give away the firearm being reviewed for free. Each item reviewed is given away for free as part of their promotion for purchasing what they call a field review. Now, what is a field review? Well, a couple old crayon eaters go out, they take the firearm being reviewed, they go review it, and then they do a whole write-up, they let you know their thoughts, and then you can purchase that review and potentially win that firearm. They try and limit the amount of spots people can purchase, that way you have a better chance of actually winning the firearm. I think the max that they do is about 35. So, 1 in 35, not terrible chances, especially considering some of the reviews are only like $25. So you throw $25, you get to read about a firearm maybe you're considering buying anyway, and then who knows? Maybe you just win it. So feel free to check them out, fieldseats.com, and use code ARTWAR to save yourself 10% on your order with them. That is fieldseats.com, and use code ARTWAR to save yourself 10%. This episode is brought to you by Advanced Warfighting Solutions. Advanced Warfighting Solutions, they have quite literally everything that you need to be a lethal, super cool Instagram operator, and also just a super cool actual operator, or just a super cool civilian, or just whatever the fuck you want. They have battle belts, plate carriers, assault packs, pretty much anything nylon, they got it. So be sure to check them out. Use code ARTWAR10 on an SMU war belt, and you'll save some money. We don't get any kickback, you just save money. Huge thank you to them for supporting the show, and let's get back to Lucas Botkin. Hiring those people that complement your weaknesses is one of the most important lessons that I've learned, because I used to, when I wasn't in a position where I could hire people, it was like, oh, I like you. Like, we think similarly. That's good. Like, we're going to work well together. And then it's like, what do you do that I can't do? Like, this isn't, like, I like you, sure, but you don't bring any value that I don't already bring. And I'm not leaving, so you're going to leave. And figuring out how to bring in those folks that really, they complement your weaknesses, I found just to be invaluable in my neck of the woods. And I'm sure that's kind of like a all over type deal. How did you come to learn what you know about business? I feel like with you, it's a lot of trial by fire, seeing what works, and then a similar mindset to kind of what I have, where it's like somebody tells me I can't do something a certain way, so I'm just going to be like, no, I can do it that way, and it's going to be better than your way, and it will be more successful.
Yeah, so what's funny with me is I have only read, I think, technically one business book or two, I think. I'm trying to catch up. In fact, we have books we recommend to managers, and I'm behind on those. I haven't read all of them. So I've got to go read those. Our operations guy and one of the other guys who came from another corporation set those books, and I obviously have to make sure that the principles within those books match the company direction, which I'm like 99% sure they do based on what's in the books that I've been told about. But yeah, the majority of learning about business has been just trial and error and just thinking about it and being like, what makes logical sense? There's been a couple business owners I've been able to talk to about how they do things. Honestly, the thing that that has probably been the most helpful for me is looking at what businesses do, and I'm pretty good at this, and analyzing what they don't do or what they do poorly, and then all I do is do the opposite. And that's worked pretty well for TREX. I was looking at holster companies early on and going, well, they don't do this, they don't do this, they do this badly. I'm just going to go do the opposite. And the opposite of that is this. And then, it works. Like, none of them take photos of product. Oh, well, I'll go take lots of photos of product. Worked out pretty well. And you can piggyback off of people's homework like a lot more than people realize. And you don't have to go spend a bunch of money, getting all sorts of like crazy business, courses, or like having an MBA or whatever. Like, you can learn a lot of stuff if you're willing to analyze and sit down and put in some work on the front end. So, but a lot of it has been trial and error. And I've made lots of mistakes where like, I thought this was a good idea. And then talking to people, they're like, no, it's not. It's actually this over here. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's good to know. But yeah, I've only read like one Pat Lencioni book. I'm going through Built to Last by Jim Collins right now. And I haven't taken any crazy business classes. So it's like 95% self-taught on the job, and which is cool. But the books are definitely helpful. I mean, I've learned a lot just going through this current book. And the fun part is when you're listening to, an audiobook on one of these books or reading one, and you start seeing concepts that you're already doing, it basically confirms how you've been running the business. So there's been a bunch of things that I've, heard in this about how businesses are built with vision and how consistency beats, all these other things that they're doing. And I'm like, cool, we've already been doing that. I've already been doing that. I guess I'm on the right, direct course direction. And then they'll bring up something. I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I actually need to like go thoroughly, like write that thing out, present that to people, do a better job at that. So that's where the business books really come in handy, is to confirm your hypothesis for how you believe your business is doing or should be, where it should be going. But you can't learn. And I think that's it's the same thing with like any skill. Like at some point you can't, I talk about this all the time. There's people out there who study 99% and they only do 1%, and you're not going to be good at doing the thing. And a perfect example I have for this, and it's, I was studying, are y'all familiar with StarCraft 2? I'm going to assume, because y'all are, young, like my age, you're familiar with Blizzard Entertainment. And, so StarCraft 2. So StarCraft 2, super cool game. One of the most difficult games to get good at in the world, besides maybe one of those dumb MOBA games, whatever. It's up for debate.
Dude.
It is what it is. So I was studying StarCraft 2 about a year and a half ago, and I was watching pro games. I mean, every night I'd go to bed, I would watch like some pro game, highest level, and analyze what's going on. I'd listen to commentators. I would even take notes because I wanted to get into StarCraft 2, and I wanted to kick Zerg butt because I was going to play Terran.
Of course.
Yeah, but I spent like 3 months, didn't really play the game. And then towards the end, I was like, you know what? I've done 99% studying on this subject. I know a lot, but I can't do anything. I don't know my hotkeys. I don't know how to move around on the map. I don't know how to be efficient. I don't have a build order. I don't have a plan. And that's a perfect example for what a ton of people in the gun industry do. They read forums nonstop. They have all this head knowledge. It's impressive. They can write out these long, convoluted, diatribes about like zeroing and bullet velocity and whatnot. It's like, dude, if you're reading 99% and only doing 1, like you're going to suck no matter what. Like at some point you got to go 50-50 or 60-40 or something and get out there and do. And so for me, it's been probably 99% do and 1% study on the business side for the last like 8 years. And it's only been in the last year. I'm like, okay, I need to go to like 20% study, 80% do, because that's what the job requires. But I kind of got to go read some stuff, talk to some people, talk to some coaches, talk to some comp specialists, and actually like learn this stuff to help save some of the error that could occur. Because now the error is like people's jobs, money, reputation, brand. Like it's kind of a big deal if a mistake happens now, a lot bigger than it used to be. So, but the percentage of study to do is something that a lot of people need to be pretty honest with themselves about, because it's a lot easier to study than it is to get out and do, especially since there's no metrics for how well you're studying when you're doing it on your own or how bad you are.
It's interesting you bring up StarCraft. I noticed you're getting into Warhammer 40K lately. Not to derail again, but that's kind of my job, and I think that's the only reason Mitch keeps me around.
So,
yeah?
What's the question about?
I don't know. I'm just saying you're just getting into Warhammer. I saw you got some Space Marines going on.
No, I'm having fun. Yeah. So Mitch, this actually goes into what Mitch was asking about at the beginning. He said, have you ever thought about taking a break? Taking 2 months off, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. But whatever. So this is kind of...
It was the greatest thing I ever did.
I will strongly consider. There's a lot of studies that show that taking healthy breaks actually produces productivity. Like it's a good thing. I know it is a good thing, but we'll get there. But I like trying new things. Like I like trying new things on occasion. And the thing with Warhammer, I'm just going to say it. Growing up, I would have never been allowed to do it. So I've always kind of been interested in, I want to get into 40K and, have some battles, paint some dudes. But I love painting miniatures growing up. I had like historical Civil War, War of Northern Aggression miniatures that, I paint. Never really got into the wargaming aspect. And then it was a few months ago, or like 2 months ago, we were in Nashville, had downtime because we were waiting for something to open. And I just looked up Games Workshop because I was like, I haven't looked at this stuff in a while, and I've always liked it. It's cool. There was one like 20 minutes away. So we drove over. I walked in and was like, this is what I want to do. I want to get into this, spend a ridiculous amount of money because it's super expensive. Like it's a crazy business model they've got. Super good. It's like a $400 million company every year. And so I kind of like did a poll for like, what army do I buy? I had already decided though, but I wanted some confirmation bias. And went home, studied, And instead of buying everything online, I went back to the store to buy because I want to try to support that business there, And went back there, and the dude, super helpful guy, best customer service experience I've ever had, like by far, was the guy working there at the Nashville Games Workshop, and bought up 2 armies, one for Kara, one for me. She wants to do it with me, so it's a thing we can do together, and it's just different. And I'm hoping it's an activity I can go and do with randoms, in the Nashville area who don't know who I am, because that's a lot of fun when I can detach from the gun stuff to do something that, isn't always part of that. And so we'll see, but it's different. It's fun. It's also a thing I do while listening to my business audiobooks, because having ADHD, I mean, Nathan, you probably know, like sitting and reading a book is extremely difficult. Sitting and listening to an audiobook is impossible if you're not doing something. So like, I got to have something to do to justify, that listening time. And so that's my time where I listen through these, books and paint and create an army to go crush kids, and adults that are kids, I guess. And so, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I love that. No, I love the Warhammer lore so much. I never really got into it until recently. And even then, all my friends do it, and it's really cool. But every time I've gone to Games Workshop to buy anything, they're just the nicest people. Like I don't understand where they find these people. You're right; it's the best customer service. Like they learn my name every time I go in there. It's like, oh, hey Nathan, it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Mitch, go ahead.
So I was going to ask back to you, kind of like reading and like about all these things and learning how to do all these things and kind of getting that confirmation of like, okay, what I was doing was right. Oh, maybe I haven't thought of that. I'm going through. So I've been coaching without any type of certifications for a while now, and now I'm having to go through the certifications because I'm getting to a level where they're like, hey, like, sure, you have this experience, but we also want to see these certifications, which I think is kind of dumb, but I get
Sure.
it, whatever. And I'm going through some of these things. I'm like, okay, like this is confirming that like 85% of what I've been doing is the right thing. And then there's like 10% where I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I could implement. But then there's this like 5% where I'm like, no, like that doesn't work. Like, and I know that doesn't work. And I've tried that before naturally and it didn't work. So why are we teaching that? And like, it's not just me that tried it and didn't work. Like I have a whole network of people I talk to about this thing, and we all agree like this is the wrong thing to do. So I'm going through that with coaching. Have you experienced that at all when you're learning about business or just in general, where you have that little bit where you're like, why that? Like you said, everything else right that has worked so far, but there's like some things where you clearly just don't know what you're on about.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, I think 5%, I mean, who knows what it actually is, but I think it's a decent number to go off of. That definitely comes up in conversations we have. Like we've even had like lean experts and Six Sigma people come in, and they give us all these recommendations for things we can do to be more efficient on the shop floor. And they're all the right business decision, but it'll make us a sweatshop and not necessarily be very good on the employees or very healthy or very, effective as far as being a fun place to work. And so every once in a while we get those and we're like, nah, that doesn't work for our company. Like, sure, that might work for a company like, Amazon Shipping that has they want to turn employees around, every year or every 2 years. Nobody's sticking around. So a lot of it's just weighed based on, the priorities of the business. Like, do we want to be a fun place to work? Or do we want to be a place with maximum profit margin? We go through people every year. They leave because they're upset, or this is just a jumping, what's the right word? Like a trampoline to the next job. That's all we are. So yeah, there's that 5% that I get in books too, where I'm like, nope, that doesn't gel with our company. That doesn't gel with our vision. That doesn't gel with the brand. I totally see why that would work for a insurance company or this crazy mass production company that's putting out $10 widgets and they just need 1,000 people. They're paying $10 an hour. Like, cool. I get it. That those people aren't going to make a career out of that. They're young. They're there for, it's like McDonald's. Like they're there for a couple of years and they're out. So yeah, it is like that 5%. And I think it's usually pretty obvious, typically, especially if your business or your own way of doing it is pretty solidified. So in your case, it's with coaching. You already have a way of doing it that's produced results that works. So it's a lot easier for you to identify. But like for a new coach or like a new business owner, when they're told, hey, you need to do this thing because it works for these Forbes 500, companies that have 10,000 employees. It's like, if you don't have any perspective, you may go, oh yeah, I totally have to do that. I have to do 401k for 2 employees in my business because I only have 2 employees. And it's like, no, actually you don't have to match 401ks and all that, or do crazy health benefits with only 2 employees. It's probably not a good idea. You probably don't have the money for that. Probably don't have the profit margin. Probably don't have to focus on that till you have 50, which is when some healthcare stuff kicks in. So usually the experience will show that 5%, but it does suck for new people who don't know where that 5% is and how it could affect them because they haven't just built their business yet. So, oh yeah, it happens all the time. And we bring people in. I don't think I'll ever read a business book. And I think it'd be like winning the lottery like 10 times in a row, where every single thing in the book is 100% on point with the way you are doing things. Like there will always be that stuff you disagree with, something that doesn't work for you. Like even if I read a book from another holster company, I know for a fact they would do things differently than us that wouldn't make sense. We do things differently than other holster companies. So it's just knowing when to disregard that 5%, when to recognize it doesn't work, and when to recognize where it works somewhere else. But yeah, it happens.
I'm going to rant about the soccer coaching thing for a minute, but it's going to lead into it. I promise it'll make sense.
Of course.
So in soccer, I can always tell when there's a new coach because they always say, I want to play like 2010 Barcelona. Everybody always refers to 2010 Barcelona. It was one of the, one of the most well put together clubs, and they have a great team, all these world-class players, even players sitting on the bench that would have been like some of the best players in the world. They have them sitting on the bench because their roster is so stacked. And they had a very specific style of play. And then I always see coaches who, maybe they're starting out, get taught you need to play like that. And I always am like, but you're not 2010 Barcelona. You don't have like the best players in the world who already know what they're doing, who are experienced, who have won before, who have played together on the national. You don't have that. So why are we trying to teach people to coach like they have that? So knowing that, and I see new coaches get taught that, and they go out and they're running with 12-year-old academy players who have never played before, who have a language barrier, and it's just, it doesn't work. So I see that very common all the time, gigantic mistake when it comes to coaching. What do you think is one when it comes to new businesses kind of in the gun tactics industry? What do you think that equivalent is?
Boy. Well, first off, most businesses don't even study other successful businesses, which is funny. They probably should. I'd say one of them is companies trying to structure their departments so much that they don't allow flexing between jobs. And in a large corporation where you have to have a lot of decentralized command and a lot of no, this is your responsibility, only focus on this, don't worry about what these other teams do, that works better because you have a huge organization. But when you're a smaller company, probably we're going to be doing this till we're at probably 150 employees, and we're at 85 right now, something it fluctuates. We get some, lose some, is no, actually people need to be able to be multi-job faceted. They need to be able to do 2 things and be able to flex between departments and have that communication between each. And I have seen other small companies, when they start off, they want to look like a big company. And I'm like, no, you're not. Don't go invest a ton of money in these big fancy logos inside of your building and crazy stuff. You're still only 10 people. Just focus on the job and the service to the customer. The fanciness and the corporateness, that'll come later. And frankly, a lot of it sucks. Don't try to copy corporations while you have the flexibility of being a small business. And that's kind of brought up the whole benefits packages and stuff. People are like, oh, I got to do what all of these big corporations have. And it's no, you don't. You're a small business. You can get away with a lot of stuff until you hit 50 employees. Once you hit 50, there's healthcare stuff that kicks in. There's a bunch of other stuff. But I think what you're describing, it does happen a lot for smaller companies. I can't speak for the big ones like Springfield, SIG, because those companies are having to operate more like a traditional business model. But little small guys trying to look like a big business while they're small, and they should revel in the fact that they're tiny and mobile and take full advantage of that as they can. Because there's stuff we can't do anymore that we used to do, certain custom holster stuff, certain decisions we could make. When we launch a product, for example, this one really sucks. You've got companies like Shaw Concepts, awesome dude making awesome stuff. he's a smaller shop who can release a new product with not a lot of it available because he's not getting pounded by thousands and tens of thousands of customers. So he can be very mobile when it comes to launching new widgets and new products for his plate carriers and chest rigs and stuff. I'm super jealous, by the way, because for us, if we want to launch let us say a chest rig, for no reason, I'm not saying that for any reason, but chest rig, I have to have probably 2,500 of those to launch. And to get 2,500 $300 chest rigs built by a nylon company, ahead of time, one costs us a lot of money, upfront cost. We pay like 50%, then we pay another 50%, or we pay it all up front, depends on what it is and who it is. But that restricts us from being able to launch little stuff all the time. And so like these little companies, like you can do that. You can announce a little widget, sell 5 of it, and assess if that's something you want to keep selling forever, if that's part of your brand. And I miss those days. Like I can't do that anymore. Like it doesn't work. Like we have another product that we just got restocked on. I won't say what it is. And we have like 180 of it. And we said, well, at minimum we need 800. So we're going to wait another 3 months before we get enough of it to actually put it in stock and not piss people off. So it doesn't really answer your question. I'm trying to think of other like rule specifics, but the big one that just comes to mind are people trying to act like a big business and forego all the advantages they have as a small business, because you get a lot.
Well, embrace who you are, not who you want to be, I think is kind of what you're getting at. And I think that's incredibly valuable, because there's a lot of little, I don't mean that in an insulting way when I say little, but there's a lot of like small businesses that started up, in the last couple of years that I see, like you said, they're acting like they're like a 500,000 follower business that has been running for like 30 years, that has a firm grassroots like in-home name like Ruger. Like my grandfather has like a Ruger. Like Ruger has just been through the generations. Everybody knows like Ruger, even if they're not like top of the line, they are like a staple within. And they kind of play not necessarily out of their leagues, because you always want to bat up, you always want to climb and get there. But I think you have to also recognize and embrace where you are in order to get to that next step, kind of like what you're saying. Last time we talked, you mentioned that you were kind of looking to network and meet more people outside of the gun industry that were in similar positions as you, at like a similar level. And you mentioned, like you're getting into these groups where you have to like prove your net worth and do all these things. How has that been for you? Have you continued pursuing that, or you just...
Dude, that's what Warhammer is for. Meet some weirdo geeks. Yeah, so I actually, I think I talked about looking for an executive coach, and I've got one now, which is awesome. And going through that, going to try them out for 6 months and learn some stuff, and just kind of see where we go from there. But this particular organization I'm part of for that, they actually link me in with other people getting coaching, other business owners. So that's cool, because those are all people who are, interested in growing, who are probably, I kind of doubt they're all in like real estate. They probably have businesses with a bunch of employees, and that's why they're getting business coaching for their growing business. And it's not just managing assets and making zeros into more zeros. And so that's super cool. I haven't talked to those guys yet, but that's coming up. So I'll be able to sort of assess, is this a good organization to be with, to have access to these guys who are not in the gun industry, who are manufacturing, selling, advising, whatever their service happens to be. But hasn't been a whole lot of movement in that area. But there's also some people, some high-level gun owner CEO type people, or gun organization CEO people that I do want to talk to, because I want to go like a company at the top. Like the guy I would love to sit down with is the CEO of SIG, because they're probably the biggest gun industry company right now. I mean, they do everything. They got ammo, optics, rifles, guns, all the Army contracts coming down. Like they are handling a lot, and I think their employee size, just for comparison, I think is only like 2,000 employees. And so that's considered big in the gun industry, but like Walmart has like like 500,000 employees or something insane. So like the gun industry is tiny, like let's face it. But I want to talk to him about like, hey, what have you learned being in this position? What are things that smaller businesses need to think about? Bigger going into being a larger business. You know, that's a high level executive who's not. I mean, he could perform anywhere at any company. He doesn't have to be at a gun company to perform well as a CEO executive. And I've heard really good things about him too from some of my guys who went over and toured their facility. But so there are some like select CEOs in the gun industry that, like, at the end of the day, they're doing CEO work. They're doing executive work. Like, it's the same leadership stuff, management stuff that any other executive anywhere else is going to do. It just has that like gun spin. Who I'm like less interested in, I guess, is other business owners of like really small gun industry companies where it's more all that niche gun industry kind of knowledge. I want the executive knowledge. Like, I want that high level business strategy knowledge that probably has to come from, you know, a high level like SIG or Springfield or Ruger or somewhere, you know, sort of a company, or go outside of the industry. Because like I'm not super interested in small gun companies that have always been small. Like I'm just not real interested in their advice. I want to go to big guys who've gotten bigger.
Well, we similarly talked about that last time too, where it's kind of like with this, we haven't implemented it yet because I took a 2-month vacation. But it's the end goal is to reach more people beyond just within the gun industry and to get their expertise and experience and, you know, capture their audiences and kind of just, instead of being that niche thing where like you have to dive into and you have to know all these things and like it's this really like intimidating thing to kind of join. I think for some people it's more like, oh hey, like this is just kind of integrated now into like regular culture. Like, you know, these gun industry folks, you know, it's not just going to be us. There's going to be plenty of other companies and plenty of other people that are actively, I think, trying to do the same thing and are doing it much better than we are, you know, currently, and much better than we probably will be able to do. But, you know, the idea is to just kind of be like another name that's like, hey, look, like we know these people, like the Art and War guys, they run a podcast and sometimes they talk about guns with like, you know, some people, and sometimes they talk about like Raw Meat Guy. I'm really upset we weren't able to
find
get
a way
him.
to
very upset about
record
him.
with him. Like,
We need
somehow
him
he does not own a computer.
So that's like he doesn't own a computer.
We get questions every Q&A,
Yeah,
like, hey, when's the Raw Meat Guy coming on? And it's like, I want to respond to all of them.
I've been really upset about it.
Turns out he's in the hospital and maybe his test didn't work out so well. I hope not. I hope
like a Cronenberg monster.
He's still crushing it. Yeah, we have to get him a device. We were going to have a studio kinda, and then that kind of fell through, and we were like, hey, like maybe just wait for that, or we'll just send you a device. And now it's looking like we'll either just send him a device or maybe I'll just fly out, because that's going to be something that maybe I can start doing. I can just start traveling to people and doing kind of like a one-on-one thing with
nice
folks.
To not be a boot of the state anymore.
Here or there.
Nerd.
Well, I mean, this is always going to be home base.
This is this fucking like dungeon with like the.
Well, I'm looking at houses. The problem is they don't have fucking heat.
So weird.
They're like, we want all this money for this 900 square foot house. Like, I'm not...
The home base looks like you film Al Qaeda videos back there.
You don't like my hippie tapestry?
It is very nice, though.
This is the next level for y'all's podcast, though, right? This is the next level. You need to post video.
That was going to come with the studio,
right?
But that's what was going to happen. We were going to have video, but the problem is we don't have a studio, and we're all in different places. Like Nathan's still in Canada, our editor is still over in Arizona. I'm still on the East Coast. Like, it's just kind of like...
You could probably green card him, by the way. Get him in.
We're trying.
I do, Mitch. 1,000 times I do.
We're trying. Well, what is that, polygamy? I can't do that.
Actually,
well, let's move to Salt Lake City and we'll figure it out.
No. Talk to the Supreme Court and check on the polygamy stuff.
Yeah, they're just doing whatever now, I guess. You just had Redbeard over. Did you do that huge FTX that he was telling us that he was going to make you guys do?
Not yet. I want to, though. When he sent through the plan, it was like it was a 5-day course, which I listened to like half of the podcast all day with him. I wasn't able to listen to the last half. But yeah, it was a 5-day like infantryman course. which is badass, I might say. And so it's all the like hands-on skills, they're important. And then towards the end of the week, there's some rucking. There's like a 30K. Then you get to base camp, set up, have a rotating watch. And then in the morning at like 06, we conduct a raid with like I think a 5K offset. Go back. Then we do we have to escape and evade like the 5K back to our camp. And there's like a hunter force, I guess. And then have to get all of our kit and ruck 30K back. And when I heard all this, me being the inexperienced, mall ninja shooter range guy, well, I was like, heck yeah, we can do that. 30K, no big deal. Kit, not a problem. Give me weight, I'll wear it. I don't care, because like that's kind of how I roll. And then we had a meeting, and one of my guys, who's a former Marine, was like, yeah, so I'm probably not like going to be able to handle that very well either. Like that's going to be really hard. We got to start training for that right now, like for like months to get to there. So I contacted him. I was like, hey, man, we're not ready for that. We got personal training we need to do. But this is where some content and education on preparing people to this level would be really good. Like, what are the standards that should be expected of them? Physical fitness, distance, time, weight. Like, because I just don't know, like, all right, I have 60 pounds on my back. What's a feasible, realistic distance I should be able to travel in a day, either hardball or through the woods? And what kind of woods? Are we talking jungle or like, where Edward Cullen is up in the trees and it's all open and, the pine trees and stuff. And so we kind of talked about that a little bit. And so when he came out this last week, it was basically just spending a bunch of time brainstorming. He got to spend a lot of time with our different departments, talking to them about infantryman stuff for the next, let's just say, phase of TREX Arms. And then we did some shooting. And we filmed it's an hour long, so that's fun. An hour and 10-minute long video titled, What Infantryman Gear Civilians Should Own? Question mark at the end, technically. And so it's them going through, like, this is all the default stuff you need to have, regardless of scenario, because everyone loves to say, oh, what backpack do I get? And they say, well, mission dependent, Met TC, whatever. But the reality is, I don't get issued equipment prior to an operation because I don't have the government giving me a bunch of stuff, prior to civil unrest. I don't think the government's going to give me, they'll give the Taliban stuff, but they won't give me a bunch of stuff, before things go to pot, which is unfortunate. Anyway.
Well, I mean, if you post a bunch of like school shootery stuff, maybe they'll give you a Daniel Defense.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very possible, but that's also only like $1,800, but so I want something better, but, so the concept of the video is, hey, this is stuff that the average person should own and start collecting, like to have access to. So when something happens, you then pick what you want, based on that scenario, but you already have it. So that's basically like, it's like core default basic gear. So it's an hour long of Felix going through, and they brought stuff over to show, and so great video. I think it'll be a good resource people will go back to. It's not like a fun video of like, running and gunning and, entertainment. Like, it probably won't get a ton of views, but it will be a video people go back to as they're like, okay, I need to price it out. If I price out everything that they had as a default, it's probably in the $3,000, $3,000 range, not counting rifle and ammunition. So like, it's not something people are going to go out and buy in one go. It's going to be something people have to budget and slowly accumulate, but hopefully accumulate before something bad happens, where then you can't buy stuff anymore, or you can't get certain items. Like, we can't get cat tourniquets. It's almost impossible to get cat tourniquets from North American Rescue because, of the war and everything else. So people got to buy that stuff ahead of time, like way ahead of time. So yeah, so that goes up, though. I'm dating the podcast, but that's going up tomorrow, which is technically probably weeks before when this is published. But
probably a week, week and a couple days.
Yeah, this will be not this Sunday, the
first
Sunday.
weekend of July, not counting this one.
Nice. So a week ago, we published this video. Nice.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
And
I should make a prediction. Hey, no, I should predict how many views it'll have because this is published. Wait, let's see. 380,000 views by when this launches. And we'll see if I'm right.
I'm going to say 530 530,000. I think it's going to do better than you think it is. I think more
It's
people
true.
are interested. They might not. So like the view thing might drop off because people pause and come back. So like they'll watch like the first 10, then drop, and then. But I do think you'll.
It has a clickbait title. It does it.
530K.
Maybe 400. I'll say 400. We'll see.
420,690. That is my prediction right here for the record.
Hey, I'm about to hit 420 views on Instagram. Maybe by the time this airs, I'll have 420.
Yeah,
my
yes.
Instagram. Boom.
Perfect.
We'll see what happens.
Have you ever tried weed?
No. And I'm not interested. No.
Are you just saying that?
The only substance I've ever tried is frozen rain that I then put in a powder and snort it. No, just kidding. No, I have no interest. Like and I don't know if this is just like, I'm not interested in any of that stuff, cocaine or heroin or any of that, or morphine, I don't care. I have rain. I have the job. I don't care. The job enough is drugs. I mean, I get enough drugs off of that. And to be honest, Instagram, for anyone, I'm just going to say this. Anyone who has over probably 30,000 followers, 20,000, Instagram is enough of a drug for anyone at that amount. Now, you can obviously get a little bit of dopamine from having less followers, but as soon as people hit like 20 or 30K, they really think there's something else. They really think they're God's gift to mankind. And that's a hell of a drug right there, thinking you're like the greatest thing ever. So you don't need cocaine if you've got 30,000 followers on Instagram.
Mitch, I'm so sorry. Just a little shitty grin you had when you asked that. It's like, hey, that's really fascinating. Right, DMT.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I was just curious.
Hey, look that up.
You never know. I mean, like I haven't since I was like fucking 16. I can say that now because I'm out of the army and they can't do anything to me anymore. And you're technically not supposed to even before you join. But I haven't since I was like 16. But I was just curious. Maybe Lucas
does
Botkin,
shrooms like in his
takes
free
some
time.
devil's lettuce.
shrooms or something.
Oh,
I
there's
don't know.
gummies. I have a buddy who was talking to me about gummies and how like, kind of fun they are to do with the wife. And I was like, okay, like I see that for some people, but I'm just like, no, I'm good. Oh, even drinking. I drink like 4 times a year, 5 times maybe. I don't really care about alcohol. Although I do like girl drinks. I'll be honest. They're sweet. Let's be real. I think most people like sweet, girl drinks. They just aren't man enough to, come out and say it. But, yeah, if she makes me like a girl drink when we're at home, I'll drink it. It's nice. But yeah, I've just never been into that kind of thing. And I don't know if it's like my mentality or I was told it's bad growing up. Well, not really. My parents didn't actually stress that growing up. I know some people's parents did. But I also don't like care about it. Like we haven't taken a big firm stance on like drugs, marijuana, stuff like that. But like I don't really care what. I don't want to say I don't care what people do. There's some really bad synthetics from Russia. I remember getting a PowerPoint. This freaked me out when I was doing a EMT pre-study training stuff about 10 years ago. And I got a PowerPoint sent to me of a bunch of synthetics that were coming out of Russia. And it was like people's flesh going to the bone. And I was just like, these are people that keep taking it because they're so addicted to it. And it's a synthetic. It's not like a plant. It's not marijuana. Like, that's natural, It's just a straight up synthetic that's like turning these 30-year-old women and make them look like 80-year-old people. Like it was like a horror. And this is a PowerPoint. And I was, 19 years old, I think, 18 years old. And I got this and I was like, okay, I'm never doing drugs. Like, yeah. I'm okay. I'm healthy. I like how I am. I like my bones and my skin around my bones. I'm all right. I don't need that. So there's some weird stuff out there. And that's probably a different discussion. Synthetics versus natural, psychedelics or drugs, whatever. They're not technically drugs, but marijuana, stuff like that. I just frankly don't really care about that stuff. Except for, I guess I'd have a pretty big problem with parents forcing their kids to use that stuff. That'd be pretty bad, I guess. It'd be pretty horrifying.
That would be,
yeah.
That would be
very bad.
Just like,
that would be
hey, little Timmy, smoke this blunt. Smoke this blunt or you're not going to eat any dinner.
Exactly.
I had a problem with meth heads. I think I talked to Nathan. I definitely talked to Nathan about it. I had a real problem with meth heads in like the last 4 months in my apartment complex, and like it got so bad, and it and like I don't care. Like go do your meth. Like I don't really care what you do. But they were making it such an inconvenience on everybody else that they did meth. Like they were leaving like needles in the parking lot, dirty spoons, and like the laundry room, the community laundry room where like my newborn daughter would like go with my wife to do laundry. Like they would be in there like all doing meth at the same time,
That
like
sounds fun,
and
right?
I'm like, no, like you're not, don't do that like where other people can go. Like it's not something that like people should be exposed around. And they finally there's a lot of things that happen, but the final straw, we're not going to get too deep into it, but everybody in the complex was like, hey, like you need to like get rid of these people. Like we don't care that they're doing meth, we care that they're doing meth, one, where we do our laundry, so like our laundry isn't clean, and two, like they're leaving their trash, their dirty needles like around where we go. Yeah, like that's not, we don't want them. They're loud, they abuse each other, like they would fight. It would be like 3 a.m. and like you would hear them like slamming doors and like screaming at each other. Like it was a bad situation. But the final straw, me and my wife were doing laundry, and we were doing my daughter's laundry because every time you buy like a new infant clothes, I guess you're supposed to wash them. I don't know. She tells me what to do and I do it. And I go in there and people had complained and they were getting evicted, and they opened up the dryer and the washing machine where it was purely just like newborn clothes, and they pissed in it.
Like on your laundry?
Yeah, in the washing machine and dryer where my daughter's clothes.
No, 100%.
And it
should have been putting some meth heads in some trunks.
It was a whole thing. Jeez. But yeah, some drugs really make people do really dumb things.
But I will say,
so
does alcohol. And this is the real fun part of the conversation, because people like to be all riled up, and and I actually think the whole drug conversation, I mean, we can also look at the homosexual community and abortion and all that, but it's all cultural desensitization of various types. And there's gun culture 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Well, there's also homosexual, culture 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. It's advanced over the last, 50, 60 years. But we also have the drug culture. It used to be all drugs bad, 20, 30 years ago. Like everyone agreed. But now we're at a point where it's like, no, marijuana is all right. Like we can have vending machines in Colorado that pop this stuff out. And so like this cultural desensitization, thanks to movies, people like Joe Rogan. I mean, he's probably one of the biggest, without realizing, biggest reasons stuff is getting legalized, and most people probably just have no idea. But that's why so much of the stuff is people are desensitized to it. But it's always funny to me that in the process of having these discussions, the same standards aren't applied to alcohol. Because like alcoholics also do really reprehensible, horrible things to kids and wife and family, or wives to husbands. And people are like, no, weed bad, but alcoholism, not as big of a deal. Bad, but we're not really gonna, talk about it because we don't want to talk about our alcohol that we like. It's a very inconsistent standard that I see across the board. And that's been sort of a question people kind of ask me, like, oh, would you hire someone who does weed, or also I don't know how you do weed, but would you hire someone who does weed, or, and I'm like, well, do I want to hire someone who's a flaming alcoholic who beats their kids at home, and their wife? Like, probably not. Like, not really into that sort of thing. But I don't see people having that conversation of consistency, because it's both are substances. Both are substances you can abuse. Just like, I mean, there's probably other things you can bath salts. I mean, you can abuse that. Tide Pods, you can abuse that. You probably won't live very long though if you abuse those too much. But
yeah, you can abuse literally anything.
Yeah, and I would like to see, and not that I don't have a lot of dogs in this fight, but a more consistent conversation on substances, including alcohol. And I'm not against alcohol. I'll drink it. Alcohol's, hey, if you like it, cool. Like, I bought a nice bottle of, what's it called? Pappy, at a charity event. Don't know when we'll drink it, but like, it's a very nice bottle. It's fun to own, but I don't see that consistent conversation happening with people about alcohol that they probably should. Plus, it's also just a lot of money. People just literally piss it away. They drink it, piss it out, and then they complain about not being able to own night vision. It's like, well, you dropped a lot of cash on alcohol that literally made you a little bit happy, gave you some dopamine, but you could have had night vision, which is like a diamond. It's the forever present.
Yeah. So. No, I see people go out and spend like $100, $200 at the bar. I stopped drinking a little while ago. I mean, I never really abused it. I'd have a couple White Claws to loosen me up for the podcast. That I
Ah.
literally,
You'd abuse it on this podcast.
I did not. I'm Asian. I had like 2 White Claws and it would knock me out. And I only ever drank it for the podcast, until I learned how to, just not do that, I guess.
You bring up a good point though about consistency in argument, because there and just conversation. Well, we won't even call it an argument. We'll just call it conversations. There's a lot of inconsistencies in general when it comes to, like you said, alcohol and drugs, and all of those things are very, very, very nuanced. I would love to ask you about the homosexual culture 1.0, 2.0, 3. I kind of have an idea of what you're getting at, but I'm intrigued by that. And I do think that with those conversations, you can't just be like, no, it's terrible. No, this is great. We need to be promoting all of these things. We need everybody to be doing all of the marijuanas and all of the alcohols, and everybody needs to be gay and fucking each other in the butt. Like, like you don't like it. There's a lot more to the conversation that
Right.
isn't happening. And I think that's just something in general. And I think that just stems from politics bleeding into culture, bleeding into everything that we do. It has to be, this is the greatest thing in the world, or this is the worst thing in the world. It's interesting, but since you brought it up, I'm very curious about the homosexual 1.0, 2.0, 3.
You're intrigued by it, which makes me think something. No, so this is actually. So I'll be honest. I have some theories, right, that I have not gone out and studied, but I've also talked to some other people, and I think the hypothesis is there, and it would be proven correct if studied and with numbers applied to it. So I'll use a perfect example nowadays. I think nowadays they estimate 2% of the American population is gay. I think something like that. It's like 2%. So on a consistency standpoint, it would make sense that in print media and advertising that 2% of couples shown would be gay. It would make sense from a consistency standpoint. But if we look at YouTube advertising or TV advertising, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the amount of homosexual couples, same-sex couples that are shown in my opinion, a desensitizing fashion, it way exceeds 2% of what would be consistent with the demographics of how many of those people are in the United States, which is very interesting. Why would you have, let's just say 30%. I don't know if it's correct. I don't think it's much more than probably 30, but it's a good amount. Why does there have to be so much more of that when the population is only 2%? And does that not discriminate against all of the straight people who make up 98%? Shouldn't they have 90%, 98% of the content aired of showing, a man and a woman, with their family and so I think that one would actually be pretty easy to study, like sitting down and going evaluating ads for on all the different channels over the course of probably 2 weeks to then go, 14% of advertising or 28% of advertising shows same-sex couples. It does not show man and woman with children, lab, retriever dog, cat, whatever the norm is nowadays. And so that's kind of interesting. It's all right, there's a little bit of discrepancy there. But even looking back at and talking to some people about, the gay rights movement, back, I can't remember when it really started. It was the 80s or when they started saying leave us alone, we're going to do our thing. And some people back then predicted okay, well, if we give them that now, where's that actually going to end? And people were oh, that's all it's going to be. It's never going to go anywhere else. But if we look at culture today and what is being forced down, some people's throats. I mean, you have the cake baking thing. You've got the drag queen thing. You've got kids being involved now. It's that wasn't stuff they were asking for 40, 50 years ago, but they did start asking for that stuff 20 years ago and 10 years ago. And so I'm a little, I'm just curious, where's that going to be in 10 years? Is it actually going to be legalized that children are protected to be in those sorts of scenarios and environments, and it'll actually be culturally acceptable, at least according to some people, because of the pressure that were put on them by the homosexual community, or let's say the minority, because it's always the loud minority, it's not the majority, because I know not everyone in that community supports the drag queen, all that stuff going on. I know not all of them support it, but usually it's the minority that create change and create cultural desensitization. You don't need the majority for that. So I think that's a study that could be done. I think it'd be interesting. I think that's a study that could be done for anything. I mean, abortion wasn't always legal. It all of a sudden became legal and acceptable. And probably over the last 10, 20 years, it's become even more acceptable and understood as, oh, it's normal. It's a thing that people just do now. Like, we're not going to question it. It's a fetus, not a child. I mean, that took decades to get people to that point. And that's something, maybe I'll study that out. Maybe I'll go back and look at stuff 50 years ago, 40 years ago. But it's just like gun stuff. It's the same desensitization system of teaching people, this is normal. This is commonplace. It's okay. It should be legal. Don't question it. Let's move on with life. But little do you realize, in another 10 years, 20 years, it could be even crazier. Weird stuff could be allowed. And so I don't know. That's my theory. That's my hypothesis. I have not gone out and studied out a ton of numbers. I'm sure people can tell me, oh, no, things were exactly the same for all those communities 40 years ago. But they weren't actually like the same 40 years ago. So anyway.
Well, I think there's two things I'm really interested with that. I think when it comes to the advertisement, I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at these now. I haven't even thought about this until now. Is it possible that they keep doing more advertisements because it gets the reaction?
Sure.
It gets engagement. I mean, you're going to have people that look at it who aren't in that community in general are like, yeah, I like this company. This is the company to go to. And I mean, when you see engagement and you see that interaction, I mean, that encourages more of that type of marketing strategy. At least, if I'm thinking of it from like a marketing standpoint. And then because if you don't do that as well, I was watching, especially with this, the whole Supreme Court thing going on, people are looking at like who companies have donated to in the past. And I saw this one company, I don't even remember who, it might've been like Nestle or something, donated like $300,000 like total in lobbying, and like 180,000 of it went to like Republicans and the rest went to Democrats, and everybody's losing their mind over it. They're like, this is why I'll never drink Nestle again, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, like $400,000 or like however much, a couple $100,000, one, drop in the bucket, two,
it's going to both.
Like, it's so, like it kind of went to both. And even if it didn't, like, is that really going to affect like how you drink that drink? Like, and people do with Chick-fil-A and religion. So I think it's kind of just like an effective marketing strategy now to kind of pander to that type of thing. There's a lot to it. And I would be, if you were to do that, so I would love to actually talk to you about it, maybe on or off the air. I don't really care, but that is something that I'm relatively interested in, because I also think as well, when you look at the percentage of people that have been, reported of being in part of that community, I think that increases not only in the way of like, oh, we're introducing this to kids, and it's like kind of this weird thing where it's like, oh, kids are into this now. Like, so kids are naturally just going to try and be different sometimes, or, kind of like the emo phase. And I'm not saying like they're going through like a phase if they're going to, if they like men or they like women. I'm not saying that's necessarily a phase, but I'm saying that could be some people. And then on the other side, more people could just be reporting that they are, because they're more confident to it. People used to get the shit kicked out of them if they were gay, like, so, I think there's some nuance to those numbers as well in general. And with advertising, there's other motivations behind it. But I would love to, whatever, if you ever go about and do that,
I'll write a big book about it. But like, I'll use
really
T-Rex as an example. So we do not, like, if I were to really pick apart our demographic of gun owners, we would produce way more beginner shooting content, like way more. It'd be like 0.05%. Like, let's say night vision content. Actually, we use night vision content as a perfect example. If I wanted to produce and show night vision content at a percentage that actually reflects how many night vision owners there are in the country, I would probably only film night vision content one night a year. That would be it. Because handgun owners, like new handgun owners and concealed carry permit owners, far by the tens of millions, totally like outnumber night vision users. But I also know that, well, I want to influence more people to buy night vision, so I'm going to alter that number. It's not going to be perfectly equal to what demographic I'm hitting. And I'm actually going to film with night vision 5 nights out of the year instead of 0.01, which would actually reflect our current demographic that like visits our website, is in the gun industry. And the same with kit. Like, I also, like, we show a lot of content wearing full kit that most gun owners don't own. but that's to encourage people to think about that and be willing to accept that, which they do now. It's pretty commonplace now for everyone to own body armor. We make a lot of, I would say make a lot of money. We make money selling body armor. We move a lot of gross revenue in body armor from showing that an abnormal amount compared to just normal gun stuff. So like, it's a marketing principle and concept that just, it's there for us. So I can only assume to some extent for other companies with agendas or other organizations with agendas, because everyone has an agenda. You guys have an agenda. No idea what it is yet, but you all have an agenda of some sort. I can only imagine that some people are going, hey, we are going to show more of this because it supports what we like, what we think things should be, and here's how we're going to go about it. Like, TREX Arms can't be the only company doing that. Like, I know we're not, because this is just normal marketing stuff. And not everyone's doing it out of, insidious, reasons or whatever. But everyone has an agenda, for good, right, wrong, whatever it happens to be. And I'm interested in marketing and cultural desensitization. I mean, I've been talking about that in the gun industry now for I think 5 years. Like, hey, we need to up the ante and show more machine guns, show body armor, show night vision. Yeah, pretty much nobody owns machine guns, but I could show machine guns the entire year, which is also disproportionate to machine gun owners compared to who follows us. But that would drive home a message. Like, if I did a whole year of Instagram content with machine guns, that would definitely change people's opinions on machine guns the next 5 to 10 years, for sure. It's a lower priority compared to other stuff we're doing, but it all just goes into that, gun culture 1.0. Oh, and speaking of gun culture, this is a fun one. Nathan, I know you had your hand up, but this is a fun one. So I've done now 2 or 3 interviews with mainstream media platforms in the last month and a half. They're all catching on to gun culture 2.0 or 3.0. Now, they're behind, obviously, but they're asking about body armor. Hey, what companies are selling body armor to the public? Why do they sell to the public? How do you sleep at night knowing your body armor might be used by a shooter in the future? Asking all these questions, but they're realizing body armor is the thing to talk about. And I just talked to a lady from CNBC yesterday or the day before, and her big questions were how are firearms being marketed, and what's the next generation of firearms influencers, and what's all this about? They're starting to catch on that there's a whole nother level of education going on about firearms that is not traditional NRA, not traditional, print magazines, Guns Reloaded or whatever, stupid magazine or whatever. I'm not saying that one's stupid, but probably is. And, but they're catching on too. They're figuring out that, hey, the gun culture's improved too. It's gone up a notch from people just buying a shotgun for home defense. So I've been doing these interviews because I hope to, set some of the records straight, but also I'm gathering intelligence from what questions they're asking. And people are starting to catch on outside of the gun industry.
Oh, man. Okay, reining myself in. This is a big one. Tinfoil hat on. Okay, actually, no. I'll keep it short. This is your time. I blame academia. That
yeah, sure. I agree.
It's self-perpetuating, and God, I remember. No, I don't want to circle back. This is a schizo rant for another time. Mitch, you just got back. I'm sorry. We'll do this next time.
You're fine, dude. You're fine. So you did that interview with CNBC. How? I'm not going to ask you about that interview because I'm sure when that interview comes out, if it hasn't already, we can all go watch it.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's going to be this big fear-mongering thing.
They won't even use all my talking points. I mean,
no,
we'll see. We'll see.
We're going to cut it there's just footage of you, and each word is cut together. It's I think we should shoot minorities.
Did they reach out to you? Because CNBC, that's that's a relatively big network, and you're a relatively big. I mean, you're one of the biggest people within kind of this industry, so it makes sense why that kind of matched up. But how did they reach out to you, and what were they like? Did it seem insidious when they were trying to talk to you to get you to say something that was
they actually wrote to. So one of them got my number somehow, which is interesting, but whatever. They have a way of doing that. And then another one emailed us. So they are asking for me personally. They know. Now, they don't usually know a lot. They're like, now you make guns, right? I'm like, no, actually, we don't make guns. So I have to like fill them in. So they've done enough research to know, hey, this Lucas Botkin guy, he knows a thing or two. He's got a lot of followers. Or they hear from other people. I don't know how they figure it out, but it's enough to be like, we should talk to him and get his opinion. And maybe he'll have an opinion that lines up with ours or not. The body armor lady was very fascinating. She specifically wanted to know if there were companies that used to sell to the government only who opened up to civilians. And I said, not really. Pretty much it's us and a couple other people who started selling armor specifically to sell to everyone because all these other companies won't change their policies. And but she was looking for companies that did government and then swapped over to ask them why. Because I gave her my why. Like, I want to outfit everyone. And that probably wasn't a soundbite she wanted. But she was real interested in those traditional armor companies and why they would change. But no, none of it seemed, kind of sinister and kind of going around stuff. I only had like one question that was kind of asked, and it was, and it wasn't quite, how would you, at first it was like, how would you feel if your armor got used in a attack? And I answered, and she said, well, how would you sleep at night? And so she kind of like pushed it a little more. And so I gave her my answer, which again, I kind of doubt they're going to use, but if they do, cool. But they probably won't. So, but no, it hasn't been, they didn't seem like traditional journalist ambush attacks. These were people just trying to figure out like what's going on. Is this a thing that's worth reporting on? Is this a thing worth investigating? Is this a story that'll get a lot of clicks and views? Is probably ultimately what it comes down to. And, but I kind of doubt I talked to someone from a major network, because someone was asking like, Lucas, why aren't you getting invited on all these, Fox News and CNN and stuff? And, I actually talked to a guy from a major network who said that he used to be the firearms representative for a major network. I won't say who it was. And he would bring up people like me and other like very pro 2A people, and they would say, no, they're not aligned enough with us. We can't have them on because they won't give an opinion that's close enough. That's why they get all these SEALs who are actually like anti-gun, anti-pro 2A, and they bring them in as the experts. They won't bring in me. Like they won't. They won't touch me with a 10-foot pole unless I am so sensational somehow that they can't resist. But I'm not on that line like all those SEAL guys are. You know what I'm talking about,
I'm just going to say on the record, because I haven't said it for a little while, Tim Kennedy is a dickhead. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I have to leave now. But yeah, they won't have people on the, I don't want to say the far right, but they won't have people on the far pro 2A side because those opinions are too radical. They're too extremist. So like, I'm not counting on being on any major network, like talking to the camera for a long time, unless something sensational, like we make a decision that blows up, or I get in a shooting, or something. And then it's like, all right, we're going to have this dude on. So we'll see.
And you said you've done a couple of them. Were they all kind of similar because body armor has been a big topic just because of that Buffalo shooter had body armor, apparently. I don't know too much about those details, but I know that was a huge talking point for a while.
Abortion,
and then all of a sudden now everything is Uvalde, and then all of a sudden everything is a Supreme Court. So it's very like topical. It's literally, I think the world is becoming like TikTok and social media in general, where like you scroll, you see something, you're like, wow, that's really cool. And then you scroll, and then you scroll 2 more times and it's gone. Like that video is like out of your head. And I think that's kind of how like the news cycle is starting to work, because it's if you look at, how humans engage with things and their attention spans, like that's why these apps work so well with people. It's because it caters and it accommodates this, how humans work. But were all of these things that you've done, were they all kind of similar, focusing on those points, or
they were all different? They were all from a different. I could tell. I could kind of get a concept of what the direction of the article was, and they were all different. It's all gun based, but they're all kind of from different angles. Like body armor, companies selling body armor to potential criminals, and then one over here is like firearms marketing is good or bad, or whatever. So, but they're all with gun stuff, and people are now coming to TREX, for some of that, which is great. Like, I'm not going to be that guy who's like, oh no, I refuse to talk to journalists because they might misconstrue what I say. Like, no, I just have to be very careful what I say. And if I give them what I actually believe and they don't use it, it means what I believe is too radical for them. And so I'm safe because they won't use it. So we're going to talk to reporters, like, because someone has to at some point. And the problem is right now it's SEALs or anti-gun, and that sucks. So that needs to change, like, big time.
Yeah, that's a big point. You know, I found this a couple of years ago when I was first starting out. I noticed that a lot of people were like, no, we can't fucking talk to those like lefty liberals. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
those are the people we want to reach. And people are like, let's go to, what was it? Was it Parler or something, that one social media app? Like, everybody, that's where we're all like, we're rendezvousing up on Parler. And I'm like, I don't want to be in an echo chamber with all the same people who have the same exact view. Like, that
social
defeats
media
the
app with a
whole
bunch of Trumpers? Oh, I thought that'd be fun.
No. This is it's the exact opposite. Don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful of the people that support us and think similar. Like, I'm very happy about them, but no offense to you guys, you're not who like I'm trying to like reach.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad you're here, very glad you're here, but I care about reaching the people who aren't here, who don't have these beliefs already. Yeah. Typically, because you can't, there's no way that, I mean, maybe it happens every so often. I think Carrie Wedler used to work on President Obama. I think she did work for him, and now she's like, no, they're both like,
it's a
terrible.
tiny percent
I don't
of
know
like
why I
far
did that.
left
So like that
or far right who come back. Tiny.
Yeah. So you got to hit that middle ground, and those are the people that I want to reach who aren't here as well. I think that more and more that type of messaging is starting to get across, but I also still see a lot of folks that are very much like, people will never ever change, and we shouldn't even try dealing with them anymore. I had a conversation with this guy a couple weeks ago, and he was like, yeah, this next election, if things go to shit, we're just going to be out having fun with these liberals, making fun of them. And I'm like, that's not going to get you anywhere, dude. Like, you're just going to, you're them, except with different beliefs. So I think reaching those people are important. And it seems like you guys, we've talked about this before. It's kind of reaching those people and getting to those people outside of the industry. And, you doing that just on a business level with those high level executives, I think is a great, I mean, what else would you be doing? Like, that's a great thing for you to be doing for that purpose. I do have a question though, because over the last couple of years, I've noticed that you focus, and you do a very good job at it. You focus on these groups of people, and you kind of get them involved, and you kind of bring them in, and you change, and you grow the the overall community and people that support firearms. You did video games, you did airsofting. What's kind of the next demographic you're going to try and
this podcast has to be titled like something about Warhammer, like, for sure. So the next one, oh man, I mean, it's kind of doubling down on those. I'll be honest, the next big one is actually not going outside the community per se. It's taking the existing people to the next level, which we have a big operation that we're currently like getting done, like figuring out. This video coming out with Redbeard should be a pretty good indication of where we're trying to take TREX arms and what we're trying to do. But it's basically taking the average gun owner who owns an AR-15 and body armor and starting to think like an infantryman, like an actual like soldier, and not just, hey, I'm gonna die in my yard fighting the government. Like, that's stupid. Like, that's dumb. Like, if that's what it comes down to, okay, fine, very well. But actually thinking like a soldier and thinking with realistic expectations for personal training, what you're actually going to do, what you should be capable of doing. And that's where I believe the gun, that's like, I don't know what we're on, 3.0 or whatever, but that's the next one is the masses going towards that, or not the masses, but like a large percent of the people who are already like further down the radicalization funnel, as I call it. And so that's actually where we're putting a lot of our focus on, like for next year, is pursuing that with different types of strategies here at the company. But yeah, it's primarily, I'm still working on, the gamer, community and whatnot. Although I'm actually shifting focus personally, because I had to stop streaming on Twitch, which is a place where I reach, people again in the middle, because our new house doesn't have fiber unless I pay $1,500 a month, which, hey, cool, but that's a lot of money. And instead, I'm going to work on getting my podcast up and running, which I've said for years. And the purpose for that is very, just like what you're talking about, in the middle. Like, it's not a gun podcast. It's a podcast on business, on stuff I've learned for the last 9 years doing what I do to help other small business owners. And I'm assuming it's going to be listened to people who aren't really gun owners, or who aren't like our level of gun owner, who's like buying night vision and like training every week. People who just have a gun in the house. They've got a Glock, in the safe, but they're a business owner. They're a manager somewhere. They're employee who wants to level up, and they want to listen to that and be like, how did this young kid figure out how to run a debt-free, 8,500 employee company, and what can I learn from him? So the purpose for that is mainstream. That's in the middle. Not super radical, but I'm sure I'll get there on some, episodes, and depending on who I have on. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on for TREX right now. We haven't identified a whole other group of people out there where we're like, we're going to go after surfers, surfer dudes. We're going to bring them in and get them incorporated into the 2A thing. And we haven't really identified a whole other group like that.
I still think go after Warhammer. StarCraft 2 players.
Exactly.
My wife runs the D&D campaign, and I'm very surprised on how pro-gun a lot of those people
the nerd
are.
community goes one of two
me.
ways, I find.
Yeah. It's far. So I talked to someone about D&D. Yeah. Another thing I would love to do someday, but it takes a lot, planning and people coming over and stuff. But I talked to a guy who's pretty involved, listens to a lot of the podcasts, and he actually told me that a lot of it's very woke. What you're saying, I can see it too, because the Warhammer, there's a ton of crossover with the Warhammer community, the gun community. I had hundreds of people message me, be like, dude, I used to do that growing up. I used to do this army, or I've got this one. Is T-Rex Arms going to have an invitational? And I was like, well, sick. A T-Rex Arms Warhammer 40K tournament, where I'm the DJ, and we run, and we have crazy, I already started thinking about it, crazy lights, smoke, the right vibe, better than whatever Games Workshop does, an actually legit event, because that's what I do. I like to go all out, and not saying we're doing it, but maybe that could be kind of fun. And but in talking to him, he was like, yeah, the D&D community can go far left woke, all sorts of lots of trans people, doing whatever with the game, wanting to do whatever, and some of the lore getting more woke, etc., whatever. And then there's the people on the far right, or I guess are more, open to, I don't know what the right word is. I really don't like those words, but everyone kind of understands what it means. But people who are more open to, gun stuff and freedom and different things like that, which you kind of have to be if you're into a creative activity like that. You kind of have to be open to playing a campaign where you're the underdog fighting a corrupt, government, which is probably a lot of D&D campaigns actually. So that is kind of how it is.
Yeah, I'm gonna fuck up this relationship of this couple that was a part of my wife's campaign a year ago. I'm gonna try and get it right. One was a guy who transitioned to a woman, and one was a woman who transitioned to a guy, and they were in a relationship.
Is this in the real life or in the game?
I think I got that right.
Oh, okay. It sounds like in the game.
In real life. Yeah. No, in real life. And they were all about firearms. They fucking loved it. They were all about it. And, because I had my kit just laying around the little apartment, and they were like, oh, is that a Cry Precision JPC 2.0? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, what are those mag? And it was this is my standard. It was my standard issue Army mags at the time. And they were super into it. And we had this coming. I'm like, this is dope. You guys are cool. I fucks with it. But yeah, I was really surprised because whenever my wife would do D&D, she loves it. She runs campaigns now online. People pay her to run campaign because I guess she does it really well. She puts so much time and energy into it. She fucking, it's her thing. She loves it, all about it. I don't play. But like, I was so surprised because we would have all these people over, and I would go in my room and I would watch football. You know, that's what I was doing. I was watching football. I was hanging out with my daughter. You know, maybe I was doing something else. But like, I would start to come out and I would like converse with some people sometimes, and we would like make food, and I'm like, wow, like pretty fucking cool. Like D&D people are pretty cool, and I'm sure there's some people who aren't cool,
Oh,
but
sure.
you know, I was just pleasantly surprised. So it doesn't surprise me at all about the Warhammer thing where people are like, no, like this is like something that like we do, but we also will go out, like someone like yourself, you run TREX Arms, you're Lucas Botkin, and you're like, you want to know what else I do? Fucking Warhammer. Like, you know,
Yeah.
Exactly. I
like
paint little dudes and go and
yep,
kill other
like
little
my wife
painted
has
dudes.
all the minis. She has a whole like setup. She loves
Oh,
that
that's
type of
awesome.
thing. But you know, it always surprises me seeing stuff like that because I'm like, oh, like, you know, because even I fall victim to stereotyping people.
Sure.
I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, you're a college student, so you're a liberal, like automatically in my head.
Or my favorite, my wife has purple hair, and people are like, "Oh, she's a liberal." I'm like,
Yeah,
actually, yeah,
yeah, and it's just I fall victim to it all the time,
Oh,
and I
same.
actively try not to. Like it's so strange how that is it's such a common theme within just like the world now, where everybody has to be this, that, or the other, and you're in a
oh
category that
yeah,
like you actively try not to, and you're still doing it to people. And I realized that, and I'm like, wow, like, you know, I was expecting this D&D group, this two people who transition to opposite genders are in a relationship. I was expecting them to just be like really woke left, and they're like talking to me like really, really educated about firearms. I'm like, this is awesome. Like,
yeah,
I'm about it. You know, don't care about any of that other stuff, but this stuff is cool. So you're cool in my book. Let's go.
yeah.
Don't know about any of that. Cool. It's just weird watching how a lot of our culture within firearms and just like society culture, it mixes a lot more than I think we all think it does,
Yeah.
and that people let off as. Where just everyday people like that, people you never would expect are like, yeah, like that Grantham video. Yeah, I thought the memes about Reki were really dumb, and he had a lot of good points and value in that video. And you're like, holy shit, didn't expect that from you. Like, dope. I should stop generalizing. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really awesome seeing that pop up a bit more and more.
I
It's
think
just
I think people would identify it more, and this is kind of the tricky part. But because cancel culture has been so strong against gun owners the last like 15 years, the people who are actually just normal, like normal people, not like radicals like me and you guys, can't publicly say they have or like guns. Like I've been on Twitch streams before where, because I follow all these Twitch streamers because I'm like keeping tabs on everyone. And I clicked on one guy's profile, never thought he was a pro gun guy. Granted, he plays first person shooters. Like he literally makes his living with guns more than a lot of gun industry people with gun industry jobs. And he went, here's my new rifle, pulled out a Daniel DD4 M4 V7, which is literally the inspiration for the video. When I was like, that guy's a new gun owner. Like he doesn't know a lot, obviously, because I listened to him talk. But his first rifle or his like second rifle is literally down the fence. And most of the people in the comments for him were pretty chill. There were some people that were pissed. They were like, what, you have a gun? Didn't you know that guns kill people? And all that stuff. And I think if there wasn't so much radical polarization, we would actually see more people willing to say, yeah, I own guns. Here they are. I've got them. Like I'm a streamer. I've got a shotgun downstairs. I've got a pistol in the safe. I've got one by my bed. And we'd see a lot more people, probably like 10 times the amount of people saying, oh yeah, I have guns. But because they get hit so hard by cancel culture, culture and people who disagree, they have to like remain in the shadows and like have to stay in the closet because the guns have to stay in the closet because they can't like bring them out into the light. So I think we would actually see more of that, like people on all sides who are actually somewhat pro gun, not necessarily pro two-way, but at least pro gun. Like they can understand our side of things. They just aren't allowed to say it, and that's what really sucks. And so that's why people get shocked when their favorite streamer actually owns a gun or doesn't say they're anti-gun. And it's like, well, no, that's actually most people. We just don't get to see that because they're not allowed to say it. So
I completely agree with that. There's something I've been doing a little lately, which I'm going to challenge anyone who's listening to this. If you have the means and ability to do this, you should, which is get friends that have had no interest, or maybe they're on the fence or anything. Like a lot of people who've never touched a gun, never been around a gun, never anything, take them shooting. Go take them out, let them take pictures for social media if they want to. Let them find out that it's not actually that scary. Destigmatize it for them. And I think that's how you enact cultural change. You destigmatize things. Politics is downstream of culture. It's change the culture. Find your friends that, they might want to, or even the ones that don't want to, and say, hey, low stress environment. I'll take you. We can shoot cans with my DDV7 or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's worked. I made a goal to take one new person every week or two, and been hitting that goal, and it has changed so many people's minds. I'll pay for ammo, I'll pay for gas, whatever. I don't care. Come out and shoot. And that's how change gets enacted. It's
I'm
a grassroots
about to pretend
thing.
that I don't know anything about firearms, and I'm kind of on the fence. So Nathan wines and dines me with gas and bullets and firearms.
Exactly. That's a great strategy. No, but see, it's funny you bring that up, because I've actually, and again, this may be a thing we do like next year. I just have to figure out how much money I want to spend on it. But I've thought about like TREX Arms should run a big money Call of Duty tournament where like all the streamers want to compete. And at that point, yeah, they're competing for the TREX Arms $50,000 like prize. So they're competing for a gun company's sponsorship of an event. So they can't really, if they're anti-gun, well, it's hilarious. They're trying to compete for that, So like, we should be in that space, or a TREX Arms Warhammer tournament where it's like, yeah, people can, come and enter in this tournament. We're going to put up 10, 20 grand, and it's a mainstream competition for like the mainstream people. Like shooting competitions are great. I love them. They're awesome. I would like to figure out a way to revolutionize those to some extent, to bring in new people and make it, it's not a great system or a very efficient system right now, the way it's set up. But gun companies should actually be sponsoring the stuff in the middle. I mean, if you look at all these other companies out there, like, Nestle or whoever, like they sponsor all kinds of stuff, like all kinds of events. And the gun industry's like, no, we will only do guns. And I'm like, they're all retarded, to think that it can only be about gun stuff. And so I've thought about that, like taking the marketing budget and going, you know what, we're going to set aside $100,000. And this is going to be for non-gun activities. This is going to be for video game stuff. It's going to be we're going to run servers on different games. We're going to run and just get stuff out there that like regular people are interacting with, and just and trying not to just preach to the choir. So that might be something we do next year. I may just build out a pitch, take it to the guys, and it would be probably a considerable amount of money for Call of Duty tournaments and the new one coming out. Servers, propping up old games we like Battlefield 4, getting servers for those, Warhammer tournaments. I mean, you name it. I mean, it could be all kinds of stuff. There's a competition in, I think it's Australia, where they chase a cheese rolling down a hill. Maybe we sponsor that. I don't know.
I think that's a great idea.
Are you going to be involved in this Call of Duty like you were the other Modern Warfare?
I can't say. No, I didn't. Okay. I didn't consult on this one. If based on the stuff that I've seen, they're reusing a lot of content from the first one, the last one they did. So all of my mocap, or a bunch of my mocap work that did get used as like stuff for that is probably carrying over. But no, I didn't consult on this new one, which I mean, it's fine. I mean, I wasn't expecting it, but also just seeing the trailer, I'm a little disappointed because it does not look as good as the last one. So I kind of wish I could have helped somehow, even if for free, but we'll see how the game is. I'm looking forward to it, but it doesn't look as cool as the one in 2019, which I'm glad I worked on, because that one was pretty awesome.
I also think the 2019 one, like, people were so fatigued with the really shitty CODs that it was like, oh wow, like an actual good COD now.
And it was a throwback to, in my opinion, everyone's favorite trilogy out of the COD series.
I think you guys hosting all those types of events would be, I mean, people are going to be like, Lucas Warhammer, the skinny noodle armed Lucas, he's just proving he's a nerd and not actually a gun guy. Like, I'm sure those people will come out and about, but ultimately, like, that kind of happened with the airsofting thing. Like, people were really anti-airsoft, and like they had stuff to say, but now I think people are more confident to be involved in airsoft, and there's more airsoft content, and that overlaps with the firearm stuff. So, like, it's kind of just blazing that path and getting over that initial hump of just people that are going to complain just to complain, and then those people ultimately get outnumbered by the people that you bring in, and they see the benefit. I think Warhammer. I mean, Nathan, we should do a Warhammer thing. I don't know about Warhammer, but
dude, I'm a cheap asshole, and I've done this for friends before. You know those resin 3D printers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just fucking make my own, honestly.
Yep.
Like,
well, so what's funny is, so I talked to the guy at the Games Workshop, because with all the 3D printing stuff, you can go get an army for like $100 on Etsy. You know, I've looked around, versus like $800 to $1,000 of actual like licensed miniatures. So I asked him like, hey, so like, how do you guys view proxy miniatures? And he was like, yeah, we don't, that's not really, it's kind of frowned upon. You're not really supposed to do that. I was like, okay, I get it. I understand. But you know, if it was our tournament, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
So we could say, yeah, bring them. I don't care. You know, be cheap. So
do a D&D thing. My wife will come Dungeon Master for it.
What?
She would love it.
Yes.
Do what?
Apparently there's Warhammer D&D, which I find interesting. But
is it really?
Yeah, no, they've got code books and everything.
I'm willing to bet my wife would volunteer to do it for free, not for guns or for anything like that. She'd be like, I just love D&D. Dungeon Master. So she would fucking come out there and crush it.
Yeah.
We were talking, her and I, just on our level, we're talking about doing that, because I'm like, man, you want to know what I should do? And I was talking to her. I'm like, I don't even play D&D. But you want to know, I would play D&D with some of my people, like Nathan. Remember we were talking about that?
Yes.
Me, you, our producer, and a couple. I'm like, I'd do D&D with you guys. Like, that'd be pretty cool.
I'd try it again. I tried it. Maybe I'm just like too autistic for it, but I've always had trouble with it. But I've only ever tried it twice. I'd be down to try it again.
Yeah. No, I think at this point I'm pretty used to being the butt of everyone's criticism, at least doing a thing first or early on, and that's fine with me. It's all right. I mean, we put out an airsoft video. I know Haley did one like 8 years ago, but it wasn't at an event. It was just with an airsoft gun. I think we were one of the first like gun channels that put out like, hey, we're at an event, like doing airsoft, here's why. And that was like a year ago, I want to say. And then Grand Thumb did his just like a few weeks ago. And so, but yeah, people, when they saw that, were like, this is stupid. It's not trending. You guys were flagging each other and you're this and that. And you don't have range. You don't have, and it's like, yeah, it's not perfect, but it's better than, you know, just
like
talking
sitting on your ass on the couch.
AR15.com and talking about the good old days of being, you know, at a fob waiting to get mortared. So not to throw shade. I support veterans. Don't cancel me.
People are only going to be angry because they're going to be like, Lucas never served. He can't say that. But it's the truest fucking statement of all. You're either pulling tower guard, you're sitting on a fob. The only operations that are being conducted in the last 10 years, you had to have been like attached to ODA or ODA yourself, or like a ranger. Like, you're not doing anything else. You're sitting on a fob, not doing shit. So
not wrong. Oh, I'm not allowed to know that because I'm a civilian. Sorry. I can't agree with that.
It's forbidden knowledge.
You can't have those opinions.
So, I will say, so this is what we need more of. Gun culture 4.5, I don't know what we're on, is more customers asking their trainer for direct experience that is relevant to the training being provided. Because what we have a lot of, like a lot, and I remember asking a SWAT guy, I'll give a perfect example. So I've trained SWAT teams, I've trained regional, I've trained local, I've trained with one federal team. I'll never do federal ever again. And I've done high level teams too. And there's a big difference in SWAT between an SRT for a county that does a dozen calls a year because they're in a little impoverished, county in Tennessee, versus a full-time team in like Vegas, where they actually have like, I think 4 full-time SWAT teams that do 300 missions a year each. Like, there's a huge difference. So when there was a particular Instagram instructor out there, this a few years ago, and I just asked him because he said, I'm a SWAT trainer, blah, blah, blah. And I just said, hey, how many missions does your team do a year? Because I was curious, I should know what level of SWAT you are, because there's like a lot of levels of SWAT. And I didn't want to answer that, obviously. And later I found out, I kind of already knew, but I just wanted to confirm. They would do like 2 missions a month, something like that. So that's like very different from a full-time, like legit, like hitting missions every day SWAT team in like a major city. And customers, so civilians mostly, should be able to ask the trainers that they're going to train with, hey, what is your operational experience and how will it be relevant to me? Have you actually been in these kinds of gunfights that you claim? Have you been in these sorts of incidents? Were you on a team that had a high tempo training budget or high tempo operational schedule? Like what were you and what are you? Because I got to know. It's just like if I want to go take a business class from someone, I would prefer to take it from a guy who built a business either from scratch or ran a business that was already big, ran it profitably, than a guy who started 5 t-shirt companies that aren't in the black. They haven't made any profit, but he calls himself an entrepreneur because he started 5 little startups that actually aren't successful at all. And the problem is it's been so taboo to ask as a civilian military guys for their experience that we're not allowed to. Like we can't go, hey, you've been in the military for 6 years. You just got out. That means you were in from 2014 to now, 2016 to now. Well, I happen to know there wasn't a lot of operations going on back then, unless you were like in Syria or something. So have you actually been in a gunfight? Have you actually like gone through all this stuff that people think every military guy has done? And if they say you're not allowed to ask, well, you probably don't want to train with that person. But there's some legit dudes out there who've just gotten out who say, yeah, I never have been in a gunfight, but I got to go through all the taxpayer funded training. I want to give back to people. I have all this other experience that you guys don't have that I can share, training points from. And those are the kinds of people we should be looking for. Cause the last 10 years, dudes that have been in the last 10 years who are getting out probably don't have as much operational experience shooting people than the guys like back in the early 2000s who got out, who obviously were doing all kinds of stuff. But it should be permissible for people to request more or less resumes from instructors who are trying to get their business. Like that should be allowed. Just like people should be able to ask that about me if they want business coaching, like from me.
Yeah. I agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
Okay. I agree entirely. I will be the first to say it's like, you're absolutely right. You know, if someone has never been in a gunfight, or hell, they've never even been in the military, but their training is solid, that shouldn't dissuade people. But people have to be honest about their experience, what they do. And there's so much like, oh, you never served, therefore you can't teach me how to shoot a pistol or something like that. It's like, no, my memory of my military training was like taxpayer funded and fucking horrible. Everything I learned. And, I wasn't a cool guy. I wasn't anything. I was fucking nothing. But, I see guys, and this is, again, not to criticize ODA guys or anyone's experience. A lot of guys get good training. Most get bad training. Yet, the military likes to instill a lot of false confidence in people that this is the way they learned. I've had people, open range day or something like that, they'll be like, no, you gotta do this, your recoil is going to go everywhere, and they like do the tactical turtle hunch.
Oh yeah
a lot of that. But I think that there's a little bit of an over-reliance on, okay, you've been in a gunfight and therefore only your experience is valid. Or even the other day, and I'm not going to point fingers because I really like the guy's training. I really...
I'll point fingers. Who is it?
No, I actually like the dude, and I want to bring him on. I'll put it in the chat because I actually really like the guy, and I think he brings a lot to the table. But he, like, I was watching his newest video and had a lot of good information in there. But he said, and just this phrase bothered me, like, we're not doing this kind of theatrics because we're shooting people, we're not shooting paper. Like, the competition guys do this, and they got the really light slides, and therefore it doesn't work. Yeah. It's like, that's not necessarily true.
So I have a good example for this. So I had a guy reach out to me. It was a while ago. It was a couple years ago. There's a big thing going on. Some hedge fund manager type people were going after me. So he messaged me and said, your business is run horribly. I would do a much better job than what you're doing right now. And I said, all right, well, what's your experience? And he said, I got an MBA. I just got done with school, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, that's pretty cool. You think you think you got a lot of knowledge because you just finished this thing and however that whole thing happens. And I said, have you ever run a business before? And he said, well, no, I haven't. I said, oh, okay. So how do you know, one, where we're actually at as business and how profitable we are, what's going on? And two, you actually have no experience doing this thing. You just did a bunch of schooling. And the reality is a lot of folks in the military the last like 10 years, they go and get all that really formalized, MBA level training, which is, hey, badass. You get a lot of perspective. Like maybe you can avoid some mistakes that could happen later on, but maybe they never got a shot of actually doing the thing. And the thing is, there's nothing they should be ashamed of that. Just be honest with people. I'll still go and train with a SEAL dude or an ODA guy. Definitely a guy who says, yep, I never actually was able to do this operationally. I did a couple things which are kind of cool. I did a bunch of training, so I kind of understand how people need to be, assessing their own skills and how they need to be doing their things. And I'm like, oh, you're honest about what you did and didn't do? I want to train with you. Like, that's what I want. Yeah. I don't need some dude claiming they killed 10 bin Ladens who actually never did, and I've spent an infinite amount of money with them, and then later they get found out as a fraud. Like, that's a bad use of money. Like, that's not, I mean,
I will say that it is. Yeah, I will say that, like, it's easy to fall victim to. Before I even started this page, I had just gotten back from a deployment, and I'm like, oh, like, I'm the shit. Even because, like, I was attached to ODA guys. I did like a couple operations. I mean, now looking back, and that always surprises folks who are like, well, what, like, like, talk about your time in the Army. I'm like, I did like the least intensive like combat that you could ever have. Like, my experience with like combat, like I put it in like quotations because it was like the least intense that like I think you could experience. Like, we got shot at a couple times, we got ambushed a couple times. Like the CQB that I did, in air quotes, like, it was a gigantic mud hut and I was still scared shitless. Like, it was the lowest intensity that you could probably have. But I remember getting back from that deployment, I'm like, oh, like, I've done shit nobody ever has. I am like, and I had this mentality where I'm like, I'm what I didn't think I was like an ODA guy, but I'm like, my experience is better than everybody else's because I was with them. I trained with them. I did all these things. I shot, like, all these things. It's a very easy, trap to fall into when you're in the Army and you do something even at a low level, and it's encouraged. Like, if you aren't that Billy badass, like, you're irrelevant, and that type of behavior is encouraged because, how else are you going to be that successful teacher when somebody comes up to you and says, hey, what combat experience do you have? And even if you have none, if you say none, like, oh, well, they're not going to trust me and believe me, so I have to say
so
it.
What's funny that you say all that is, so we hired one vet recently, and there's a few others that we've been talking to, and most of the guys that we're looking at hiring who are veterans are guys who are only in for like 4 years. They didn't do anything crazy operationally, but the thing that we like about them that stands out to us is they're still eager to learn. And they're willing to admit, hey, I didn't do a whole lot of cool stuff. I did all the training. I got to this unit. Some of the guys that we're interviewing are pretty high level. But even being high level to get there, get through selection and all that stuff, they still didn't get to do cool operational bad guy killing stuff because, I mean, it's didn't last like 4 years. But I'm interested in them from an employer standpoint because they're still eager to learn. And these aren't like 12-year veteran, tag dudes that have just come off of a thing. They're young guys who are still hungry, and those are the kinds of people that we're looking for, and frankly a lot of companies are looking for. Like, very few companies want to hire a washed up veteran who is in for 20 years, who's completely broken, has no energy, who's not motivated, just wants to retire but thinks he's worth $250,000 at this corporation because of his background. And like, he could be worth that potentially with leadership acumen and whatnot he could bring to the table, but only if the energy and charisma and interest to continue learning is still there. So like, those are the people we're looking for. We're not looking for these like crazy. It's kind of funny. Like, all the guys we've hired besides our operations guy, who's a former Marine colonel, like, are all like 4-year vets. Like, they're not like career military dudes. They're like, they did some time, they went through the training, but they're still eager to learn, and they're a professional civilian is what they are right now. And that's why they get hired, because we're like, hey, you've got a little bit of experience to understand some stuff. We're gonna, let's offer you this position and let's go to work and let's do some stuff. And it's been super cool working with those guys.
I agree entirely. I honestly don't think, like, even doing the cool guy stuff, shooting a bunch of bad guys in the face, whatever, does not mean your opinion really matters more than anyone else's. Found that out the other day with, what's his name? The SEAL who claims to have shot bin Laden, going around just posting all those shitty opinions about guns. Fuck that guy. I don't remember his name. He's not even worth me saying it.
I always forget his name too.
Yeah.
O'Neill. O'Neill. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, He's a dipshit. Fuck
Oh
that
no,
guy.
it's an easy trap to fall into, like I said, and I did it at one point. And it's just like you don't have to. Like I thought I had to, and I thought that I was. Like I truly believed that I was, and I think a lot of people do that and they don't get humbled like I did. Like it took being humbled where I'm like, oh shit, like I actually don't know. Like just because I did this thing doesn't mean like I'm all knowing. So like if you are one of those people, please humble yourself or get humbled, because like it's not necessary. It really isn't necessary. Like there's nothing wrong with going through your military career 3 or 4 years, getting out as like an E4, E5, and then being like, yeah, I might have deployed, sat on a FOB. That's about it. Did some training, and now I'm here to like learn and do some other stuff. Like that's great. That's better, I think, than being like you were in like 6-10 years and you're like, I'm Billy Badass, I did all these things, pay me all of the money. Like,
yeah. And I'm not, and I want to, because this is another important point. I'm not just saying this because sometimes people, like I say this and they're like, well, Lucas, you just hate veterans. Like, no, I'm applying the same standard to myself, because I can sit here. I've been doing this for 9 years. The company's still going strong. Only 3% of businesses get past 10. If we get past 10, like that's some stuff I can talk about and brag about, and like it actually means something. Like a multi-million dollar company with a lot of employees, nationally recognized. Well, I wouldn't say nationally. Well, recognized by people all over the country. So I guess technically that counts as nationally recognized. And I could take that and be like, hey, I'm Billy Badass. I built this thing. It's super cool. But I'm still a tiny worm, like compared to actual like CEO, high level executives, companies like SIG, like TREX is still tiny compared to those people. And so this concept like of taking whatever small experience you have or a lot of experience you have and still being able to step back and look at it with a wider, like more humble perspective, it applies for everyone. Like regardless, like you could make $500,000 a year at some like crazy job, pat yourself on the back and be like, yeah, I know everything. And it's like, well, no, because you're not making $1 million a year. You could always still get better. Or if you're a CEO of a company, it's like, yeah, your company could be bigger, or you could manage more people or manage more resources. Like just because you've gotten to a point now doesn't mean you're now the expert and you're at the end of the line. Because I mean, there's dudes. I was doing research on CEO salaries because I'm just doing some just general perspective stuff. Like Elon Musk walked away with, just for some perspective, I think he had something like a $90 million salary in just short-term incentive last year on top of whatever else. So it's like kind of puts some things into perspective. If like you have a company that's doing well, but there's dudes out there that are pulling in salary that potentially like completely outgrosses your own company. Like, yeah, that's good. Like have that perspective. Like pursue their level of competence and your business will probably do pretty well if that's the standard you're going to set for yourself. So I've got to guard myself, because I don't want to be like one of those vets who says, I did this thing for 10 years. I know everything. I'm going to charge, I'm going to go write a book and charge a ton of money for it. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm still learning. And that's kind of the point of the podcast I want to do is talking about my journey as I go and what I'm learning, because I ain't done. None of us are. None of us should be. None of us are done. And I bet Elon Musk would even say, oh, I'm still studying. I don't know. I bet he would say, I don't know anything. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, if you know nothing, what do I know?
The Dunning-Kruger effect is really real. The more you know, the less you think you know.
Well, I appreciate your time.
Versa.
I know you got to run and go film a thing. We don't know what that thing is, but you got to go film a thing. Yeah, I could tell.
How to shoot rifle in 10 minutes.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's the closer for the
10 minutes.
That's publishing maybe yesterday, according to when this gets published.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yesterday.
So.
What's up
yesterday,
with you and Garant
insisting
on posting right before us on our days? Garant posts his videos like 2 hours before we post our podcast every day.
Well, you guys change.
Every Sunday.
Look, we do Saturday. I'm not doing Sunday, because it's the Lord's Day and Chick-fil-A, eat that the day before. But we do Saturday, and you guys can find a different day.
I really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. I know you're a busy man, so we appreciate your time. You got to close out with some advice. You already talked about your podcast. You can talk about it some more, but you got to close us out with some dad advice.
Dad advice. Honestly, pretty much just what I just said, which is a big thing that I'm not dealing with right now, but like a thing that's a constant is regardless of where you are in a position that you're in, because, maybe you're in a really cool position. Maybe you're not. Maybe you want to get there. Just make sure you don't think you're cooler than you are, because nobody is. I get people all the time tell me like, oh, how'd you get so cool? why are you so rad or whatever? And it's like, I've done some stuff, which is, I've definitely learned from. But at the end of the day, I'm just some flesh, bone, and blood. And when I drive to work every day, I could get killed. I drive for perspective, I drive on a what's it called? A one way where there's like one lane, a single lane, to get to work. And so literally any traffic driving towards me only has to turn the steering wheel like 6 degrees and I'm dead or paralyzed. And then I can't, do my job. So if you approach life from that perspective of, hey, at any point I could just get evaporated, I could die, I could be paralyzed, I could not be in the position I'm in. That's a great way to go through life. It doesn't have to be paranoid. It doesn't have to be like terrified, but it definitely keeps things in perspective and keeps you from getting a big head, which, I mean, that's generally speaking, the number one problem that everyone has is arrogance and pride. Like everything else stems from that. So that's one way I'm trying to deal with that, is just continually giving myself that perspective of, I've done cool stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff out there I'm not doing, could be doing, should be doing, need to go learn. I'm still a worm. We're all worms, and our bodies are going to be eaten by worms when we die. So that's what I have for dads out there, or people who aren't dads yet. I don't have kids yet, so
yeah.
I'm not a dad.
Dad advice.
No, the dad advice is to all your children. And
yeah. So yeah, but thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Invite yourself on whenever you want. You have that privilege, like most of our past guests do. Most of our guests get the benefit of the doubt of just invite yourself on again. You're more than welcome.
Good stuff.
So yeah, no, we really appreciate your time. Go have fun shooting the video, and thank you.
Good stuff,
Thanks
guys. And Mitch, you I don't know what you're planning on doing, but if you leave, Nathan's gonna have to find someone else.
I'm not leaving anymore. That's why I'm back here. I almost did.
Dude, I was going to say, like, I was going to make my cat the co-host.
Yeah. Hey, that'd be a popular podcast, though. Your cat can talk on demand. Just saying.
She talking,
Nope,
Jason.
I'm here to stay for the most part. Roles are Nathan. We talked about this last time on an episode that's coming out this Sunday. Nathan is just more involved now, and I'm
taking
a little step back because I have other things in life that I really care
I'm doing
about.
more page. You're doing more podcast. I think. Kind of. Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of how
all.
that's
But
going.
you're still doing once a week ish.
Yeah.
Once
a week.
I have a small gaggle of schizo retards that can help me last minute if anything needs to be done.
Yeah.
So
once a week, and I want to start doing some more like solo stuff where I kind of like travel to somebody. Like there's some people that I just want to go and meet in general, and I'm like, oh well,
yeah,
I'm free. I'm
sure,
now, so
ask
I can.
Joe Rogan. I'm sure you can get in there and talk to him.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So.
I found out most of us are like one person away from being directly connected to Joe Rogan.
Jeez.
Hey, he follows me on Instagram.
Yeah, what? That's amazing.
Joe Rogan?
He followed me like a few years ago. He hasn't ever liked anything or commented, but
I don't think that's him. He's just posting ghosts.
Yeah, he's a posting ghost. I mean, he does schedule all the stuff on his own, so maybe you got a chance one day. I know Mike really wants to.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Okay, bye from recording.